Unlucky too. I mean, even Trump himself has been bringing up tariffs like every other day, keeping this issue alive, front and center in the headlines, and it's really just sucked up all the oxygen in the room, making it difficult for people like Marit Stiles and Bonnie Crombie to get their message out there. But I do think that it was lucky because we saw in 1990, David Peterson then called a snap election. It backfired on him and he got punished. And it seems like the complete opposite is happening for Doug Ford and the Conservatives right now.
But it could have gone the other way because look how it's backfired on the federal Conservatives.
What a
That happened to Doug Ford as well.
Yeah.
And yet it didn't. So what's the difference?
John, quick last word to you.
Yeah, one of the things I'm finding interesting about the programming up until 9 o'clock when we get the results is every time we talk to a representative for the parties, they're all winning. It's kind of like radio. We're all #1.
Right, right. Probably not going to be the case.
That comes to a crashing end in about
where's the countdown clock? 80 minutes time, something like that. Lena and Michelle, back to you.
Well, when we talk about the concerns or the actions of our friends below the border, I think this is the perfect time to take you to the border, the town of Fort Erie, where CJ Liu is taking the temperature of residents there tonight.
Lena, Michelle, when I talk to the people here in the Niagara region, they say there are many pressing issues when it comes to this election, but there is one that takes center stage, and that is Donald Trump's tariff threat on Canadian imports. The Greater Niagara Region Chamber of Commerce, about 30,000 people in the region work in the export-related business. That is about 11 to 12% of the workforce. Over 600 businesses export into the U.S. And when it comes to the tariffs, they're estimating that it could cost the average family, Canadian family, over $1,900 a year. And when you're in a border community like the Niagara region, that number could be even more. So when you take all of that into consideration, I asked voters in Fort Erie today, how much is the threat of tariffs on their mind when they are heading to the ballot box? Take a listen to what they had to say.
Tariffs are a big issue, being a border town, and my age group has different concerns than the up-and-comings, but I'm just going to go vote and do what I can, I guess.
Now, the Niagara region has traditionally leaned orange. In the last election in 2022, out of the 4 ridings, 3 voted NDP. Now, in this election, we know that PC leader Doug Ford has really framed the tariff threat as his central campaign issue, pitching himself as the only leader that can protect Ontario from the threat of tariffs. So, Lena, Michelle, the big question is, will that be enough to flip some seats from orange to blue tonight? Back to you.
It's one of the many big questions tonight. CJ Liu live in the border town of Fort Erie. Thanks so much for this, CJ. It is election night in Ontario. Stay with us as we continue to bring you live coverage of the 2025 Ontario election. We'll be right back.
I'm death gonna miss my class.
go live to Beatrice Vaisman with more from where the PCs are hoping for a big party tonight. Michelle was just talking about that sweeping victory in 2022. They're obviously hoping to repeat that tonight, Beatrice.
Absolutely. And look, this is the Toronto Congress Center, Alina and Michelle. This is the place where Doug Ford celebrated a majority in 2018, a majority in 2022, and he's hoping for an even bigger majority right here at the Congress Center tonight. And it won't be long now until this entire area is just packed with supporters of Ford Nation. I've just found Jason Leader here, a conservative strategist. You're here, you're mingling, you're anticipating a big win. Tell me what the hopes are. What would be considered a win, do you think, by the Ford camp?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously majority government people would be really happy with. Then Doug would be, I think, the first premier in almost forever to go in 3 straight majority governments. And there's a satisfaction, I think, too, with how the campaign's gone. The campaign, Doug went to the people, said, I need a mandate to deal with what we're going to have to deal with for the next 4 years. I think their message discipline, their ability to sort of stick to that has been a really satisfying thing for the campaign team here.
How well do you think Jason has the tariffs staying in the news and this continuous, mention of Donald Trump's getting ready to impose first 25% tariffs, then tariffs on aluminum and steel? That's got to play into what Doug Ford is essentially asking the people of Ontario to do, to give him a mandate.
Yeah, he said, Doug went to the people and said, it's going to be chaos for the next 4 years. You've got to have somebody strong to deal with it, somebody with experience, and somebody, sort of with a backbone to stand up to somebody like Trump. And I think that's the sort of satisfying part of this campaign, is that Doug's been able to send that message, whether it's going down to Washington or talking about it sort of nonstop. And I think this, let's be honest, it's the only issue anybody's talking about right now. Mr. Ford bet big that it would be the top issue of the campaign. It is the top issue of the campaign, and it's the likely result why he's going to have a really strong result here tonight.
Shouldn't though be the issue of the Prime Minister, not necessarily the Premier, to be positioning himself as kind of Captain Canada, the guy to rescue this country from these tariffs?
Which Prime Minister are you talking about? The one that's, that's the problem, right? We've got a dearth of leadership. We've got a vacuum federally. The Prime Minister is, I don't know where he's traveling. He was in Ukraine for the last couple of days. Good for him. But the truth is, we really haven't had a federal Prime Minister for the last couple of months doing anything of value. And Mr. Carney's going to be Prime Minister shortly. We're going to have a federal election. The problem is, what I think is where Ford has done a really good job is filling that vacuum over the last couple of months, and where someone can look at the TV and say, somebody's speaking up for us, somebody's standing up for us. That's one of the reasons why he's going to have such a strong result.
To wait and see, Jason. Thanks for your time. Thank you. So Doug Ford came out in the last election, 83 seats out of 124. At time of dissolution was at 79 seats. And as Jason's talking about, I mean, the Premier, Doug Ford, is hoping to be re-elected, number one, as Premier, and to get an even larger majority, Lena and Michelle, than he received just, 3 and a bit years ago now?
Beatrice Vaisman live in Ford Nation tonight. Appreciate it. Let's talk about Mike Schreiner and his Green Party. They're hoping to make gains, perhaps history tonight.
Yeah, that could happen. Tony Grace is in Guelph at that party's headquarters watching that storyline. Tony.
And Lena and Michelle, thank you so much. We are here at the Delta Conference Center in Guelph. As you mentioned, Mike Schreiner's campaign party is happening here tonight. With me is Cecilia Stewart of the Green Party of Ontario. Well, let's talk about what's at stake for the Green Party tonight. You could make history if you gain a 3rd seat in Parry Sound Muskoka and hold on to the 2 in Guelph and Kitchener Centre.
Yeah, it's a big night for us. We're obviously hoping to hold the 2 seats that we have. But we also have a real shot with Matt Richter in Parry Sound Muskoka. He came really, really close last time. So right now, this time, we're hoping he can finish what he started. And our team has definitely been putting in the groundwork. So
what do you think has allowed the Greens to make those gains? I mean, the last general election, it was Mike Schreiner was the seat. He was the only seat in the legislature. Ashlyn Clancy picked up that seat in Kitchener. Matt Richter with momentum in Parry Sound Muskoka. What's resonating?
I think it's just people power. Like, we run campaigns that are very person-centered. Our candidates are from the ridings, they're from their communities, they know what their communities need, and they go to Queen's Park to be a voice for them, not for, the Green Party or not for Mike Schreiner. So that people like that. And also we have an amazing supply of volunteers on the ground who are willing to work hard, put in the effort. With Ashlyn's by-election campaign, we had volunteers knocking on doors for 6 months before the by-election. With Matt, they really haven't stopped since the last general election. So it's just that slow, constant putting in the effort.
And it has been steady growth. So what is the best possible outcome tonight, considering this was a snap election and you had not a lot of time to organize here?
Yeah, we'd love to hold and see Matt Richter elected in Parry Sound Muskoka. We also have candidates in ridings like Wellington, Halton Hills, Bronwyn Wilton, and Joel Lougheed in Bruce Grey Owen Sound. And we'd love to see them grow their vote share as well, because they've been running really powerful campaigns.
And Cecilia, will let you get back to getting the party ready here tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Cecilia Stewart's with the Green Party of Ontario, hoping to hold those 2 seats and possibly gain another. We'll see how the night unfolds, and Mike Schreiner is watching those results come in with his family shortly. Michelle and Lena.
They could make history. Tony Grace live in Guelph with the Greens. Thanks so much, Tony. And let's stay with the Greens. The party hoping to add another MPP at Queen's Park. Let's go live to CTV's Christian Davino, who's in that riding of Parry Sound Muskoka, where the party is really hoping to win their 3rd seat ever. Boy, was it close in 2022.
It was. But, Christian, they're going to have to take down a member of Doug Ford's cabinet to do this.
They absolutely are going to have to take down a really tough opposition in Graydon Smith. In fact, just 3 years ago, it came so close. It was about 2,000 votes that Graydon Smith was able to hold off and win this riding. Now, that is actually the closest that this riding has ever seen since its inception back in 1999. And this time, like you've heard, the Green Party is really expecting to make this race a close one. In fact, over the course of advanced polling, this riding in particular had the most voter turnout, with just over 10% of voters showing out. I can tell you we're sitting out here right now behind one of the voting stations, and it's been a constant flow of people just coming out to come and vote. Now, the Greens, they've been canvassing strongly up here in Parry Sound and Muskoka. Mike Schreiner, he actually started off canvassing up here to begin this election campaign, and just this week he wrapped up here. And we've spoken to him over the course of these many weeks, and he's very emphatic that they think that they can finally flip this strong PC riding to the Greens. But as I mentioned, and as you mentioned, well, they do face that strong opposition, of course. Graydon Smith, he is a former mayor of Bracebridge, and he's a popular figure. He's also involved in the cabinet as the Minister of Natural Resources. Now, Graydon Smith does stand to, he is a strong figure as well with healthcare. Healthcare, he was very emphatic in terms of announcing his displeasure with the hospital redevelopment, actually taking the side of a lot of residents here in Muskoka over the course of the last year. So there's really no telling how this race will go tonight, but it does certainly make for one of the more interesting ridings within this province. I will send it back to you.
Christian Davino in Parry Sound, Muskoka. Yes, I have a feeling we'll be checking back with you tonight. Seeing not a lot of green, seeing a lot of white there tonight.
Yeah,
with the
it's
snow.
snowing there tonight.
This is CTV Ontario Election 2025. More live coverage is coming up next.
night in Ontario politics. Voters heading to the polls, and those polls are about to close at 9 o'clock.
We want to take it over to our CTV Power Board. It's an incredible resource. It's going to provide all kinds of insight tonight, and including that, demographics. How might demographics impact the results tonight, Nick?
Well, you know, Michelle, what I'm about to introduce you to may kind of freak you out a little bit, because Rupin Sioni from Environics Analytics may know you and the rest of this province better than we know ourselves based on the granular levels of data. Rupin, I was looking at your spreadsheets earlier. They are incredible, showing us really a great breakdown of what Ontario is made up of. What are we going to be looking at this evening?
Nick, we've taken thousands of data points and modeled them down to the postal code to give us a really intimate portrait of Canadians. Now, when we cross-reference that with voting data from the elections authorities, we get a really good picture of what drives different voters. So we've got 15 segments here in that cover Ontarian voters, and just a couple of examples. The largest one is called Big City Burbs in the province, and they are multi-ethnic families doing reasonably well in the 905 belt particularly, so they'll be ones to watch for sure. Last time they tended to vote Conservative. Okay. You know, another example would be modest metros. These are inner city, younger voters that could be struggling a bit with the times we're in.
Okay, so let's show our viewers, Rupin, now an example of a Toronto riding where this sort of breaks out, and it's really interesting. Let's go to Etobicoke Lakeshore right now. Christine Hogarth is the PC incumbent right now, but let's talk about the last time out where this riding went.
Yes, so this riding turned Conservative last time, and it was a little bit of a surprise because the young in the city is a large segment in this particular riding. This is a young segment. They tend to be left-of-center voters. Provincially, they tend to vote NDP. But in this riding, they voted Conservative. So the Conservatives were really good at convincing them to do so. It'll be interesting to watch what they do this time around when we actually look at some of the big issues that are going to be important in this particular riding. Big City Burbs is the second largest segment. They're pretty consistently Conservative voters, so I would expect them to stay with the Conservatives this time around. But if we look at the riding, you can see some of the finances. It's a reasonably affluent riding. $148,000 is the average household income compared to about $130 for the province as a whole. And you know, some of the numbers here, they're on reasonably solid ground. What I think is one of the really interesting issues is transit and transportation. Remember the bike lane controversies that were going on? A lot of people here take public transit to work, and a lot of people bike to work in this riding. They don't drive as much. So it'll be interesting to see whether those young voters actually stay with the Conservatives this time around.
So let's quickly refresh everyone's memory, Rupin, from last time out. The PCs win. Christine Hogarth, 37% to 36%. The New Democrats finishing a very distant third here. Looks like it'll be a race like that. And again, Rupin giving us an example of the exclusive data and breakdown you're only going to see on the CTV election special. Michelle, Lena, back to you.
Okay, we love a good political rematch. Nick, thanks so much for this. Stay with us as we continue to bring you live coverage of the 2025 Ontario election. Lots more to come. storylines and data. Nick, what do you have for us now?
There are plenty of storylines, Lena, to get into, but we've been showing you the map of the province at dissolution here, and of course, keep in mind, this is the race to 63. That's a majority. But take a look at this. It looks very obscure. It looks like this province is more than 50% New Democrat. Of course, we know that's not the case. We know that Doug Ford and the PCs went into this with 79 seats. This is a power grid, giving you a better sense of every riding as equal. So you can see here that in the 905 belt, all but one riding progressive conservative. Hamilton, Niagara, split between New Democrat, PC, and an independent. Again, southwestern Ontario, more PC seats with a few NDP seats spread in. Toronto, the area tonight we're going to be paying special attention to because there could be some seats to flip, could be some changes. Can the PCs maintain some bit of strength in Toronto, or will the Liberals pick up some seats and take them from the New Democrats? This is where you can see about half PC. Then you've got the Liberal NDPs, and then Eastern Ontario, again, PCs with a few Liberal NDP. So this is the power grid. This shows you the province, everyone the same size. We'll get out of this, back to the map, just to give you a sense of where we are. This is wiping it clean, and we'll start filling it in as of 9 o'clock. Back to you.
Oh, I love that power grid. It really puts it into perspective.
Sure
Thank you.
Oh, cool.
Just over an hour till the polls close. This is CTV Ontario Election 2025. More live coverage when we return.
Takeout night, my favorite.
Polls in Ontario closing, and we have you covered right across the province tonight.
We're joined live now by former Ontario Liberal Premier David Peterson. Peterson served as provincial premier for 5 years between 1985 and 1990, and he was the last premier to trigger an early election. The gamble did not pay off for him, but Doug Ford is hoping for a different outcome tonight. We're just waiting to get David Peterson on the line. For now, I'll throw it over to you, Lena.
Michelle, thanks so much. We're going to send it over to CTV's Queen's Park Bureau Chief Siobhan Morris, who is hanging out at PC Party headquarters. Siobhan.
Hello, I am here with Brian Lilly, columnist for the Toronto Sun and Bell Media contributor. Brian, what's the most exciting race you have your eye on tonight?
Kind of the west end of Ottawa area. There's a bunch of ridings where there aren't incumbents or where things could flip, like Canada. That was one that the Liberals picked up in a by-election that was all about a local golf course. And that, Karen McCrimmon, is she going to be able to hold on to that? You've got Nepean, where Lisa MacLeod was for, 18 years, that she's not running anymore. That's one that the Liberals are hoping to pick up, so they could actually swap ridings up there. Ottawa, to me, is one of the most interesting places, but I'm also going to be watching Windsor to see if the PCs pick off some NDP seats, and and Niagara area as well for the same reason.
Those are areas that the Windsor area and the Niagara area that had been really strong for the NDP. What do you think has changed?
Well, you just look at all the union endorsements that Doug Ford has been able to pick up, and they're all, not all, I mean, he did get a few police associations and the firefighters, but all the construction trade unions were backing him. And the reason for that is he's actually willing to approve projects that put those workers on the job. The NDP, they've been opposed to things like building highways, and they've been opposed to the kinds of infrastructure that Ford has been willing to champion. So they look around and they say, well, we used to back the NDP, but they're not backing us. So they've turned and decided to back Ford. I think he got 18 union endorsements this time. The NDP should be really worried about that.
Doug Ford has faced some criticism for not being present in the Ottawa region and the capital region. Do you think that's going to stick to him this time around?
During the campaign or in general?
In general.
In general. Look, as someone that lived in Ottawa for about 20-odd years, Ottawa always feels like they're forgotten about by Queen's Park, and that was the same when it was a guy named Dalton McGuinty, who represented Ottawa South. He was my MPP for years. Ottawa just always feels neglected by Queen's Park. So will it affect anything? Maybe in Nepean. Carleton, where Goldie Gamari was for years, that's going to stay reliably blue. As I said, they might pick up Canada, and then there's a few others up for grabs.
So there's lots of interesting races to watch. I'll send it back to you, Michelle and Lena.
Thank you, Siobhan. Thanks for that conversation. Over to Michelle now, who is standing by with a special guest.
Yes, we are joined live by former Ontario Liberal Premier David Peterson. Peterson served as provincial premier for 5 years between 1985 and 1990. If my math is correct, it's been 35 years since you called that snap election. Here we are, Doug Ford.
You don't have to draw attention to that.
But I think it's so fascinating, and I think it's particularly interesting to have you on tonight. What do you make of Doug Ford's move to roll the dice?
Well, Doug has cleverly exploited a set of circumstances that are very unique. I have never in my life seen politics really around the world driven by the fire hose of news coming out of Washington and one man controlling the agenda. And don't forget, this man has basically controlled the federal agenda. He's affecting Donald Trump is affecting the federal leadership race. And Doug jumped in here and tried to, and used that cleverly in some ways to his benefit. Now, you can analyze that and say, is it baloney because they went down to Washington and were treated very disrespectfully? I don't think there's any indication he has moved the yardsticks on tariffs or anything else. But he's been looking for an election, he's exploited it, and all the polls say that he's going to win tonight.
Your situation back then was called opportunistic. Would you describe that? And what do you think? We don't have a crystal ball, but what are you projecting tonight?
Well, the polls say that that Doug is going to win. One never knows, but there are issues here. We don't know the size of the vote yet. Doesn't look overwhelming. Looks like there's going to be a low voter turnout. You look at the situation and say, boy, politicians should be trying to encourage people to vote, not discourage them. And if you want to discourage people to vote, have a vote in the middle of winter in Ontario. So there's a lot of factors at play here. The emphasis has tended to be on, and because there's been so much news out of Washington and Ottawa around the tariff and the U.S. issue, it has trumped everything else. And the Conservatives have put tens of millions of dollars advertising in the United States, which all blows back into Ontario, and that's public money in a sense, to advance their agenda. So if you look at it that, you can either be a cynic or you can say it's clever. You pick your own definition of that. But they appear to have exploited a situation, and now they're going to end up having to solve some problems that are pretty serious.
Mr. Peterson, as a former Liberal premier, I have to ask you, what do you make of Bonnie Crombie's campaign and the campaign she's run?
Well, Bonnie inherited a party that was in pretty bad shape. and she's come a very long way. She picked to run primarily on the healthcare issue. You'll only know the results at the end of the day. Whether people, and healthcare is in serious problems, and has by and large been avoided by the Conservatives, but it may not be the top priority now. Politics is interesting. That what a lot of times what's important today is not important to people tomorrow. So whether she picked the right issue, I don't know. I'm not smart enough to tell you the answer to that. But I think she campaigned well, and it looks like she's going to make some improvements. And then if you look at the scene here, it looks like the NDP are getting squeezed out. And it's really between the Liberals and the Conservatives, and what's going to happen is, can the Liberals make any progress? I don't know the answer to that.
Well, the 20th Premier of Ontario, David Peterson, great to chat with you. Have a great night. Have fun watching the results.
This is my idea of really a lot of fun.
Sit back and enjoy. Appreciate it. It's been fun chatting with you. Lena, take it away.
All right, Michelle, thanks so much for that. Well, many have said this is a race for second place. The Liberals, they would disagree with that statement. Let's check in with CTV's Nathan Downer. He is at Bonnie Crombie headquarters tonight, talking to party insiders. Nathan.
That's right. I've got Matt Barnes joining us. He's a political strategist. He works with Bonnie Crombie on the campaign. And it was short, a snap election. Were you able to accomplish all the things that you wanted to accomplish in just, roughly a month?
Yeah, I think it was a really tight campaign, but a really well-run one. I'd say that she was very clear on her message from day one, and was effective in putting that message across to Ontarians.
Tariffs was a top topic, and I know Bonnie Crombie wanted a multi-party approach with Doug Ford. That didn't happen. How do you think that might have impacted the campaign?
Yeah, I think every leader, including Bonnie, were very clear from day one that they all agreed on the need to support the economy in light of tariffs. It moved a lot during the course of the campaign. They're on one second, they're off the other second, as we all know. She came forward with her own plan and how it would differentiate from Ford's. And then the next day, tariffs were off. So I think it was a dynamic campaign, and by the end, we've seen the topic shift. Yes, tariffs are still a reality, but people are talking about health care. They're talking about the need for a family doctor, and they're talking about other basic issues in Ontario that the Premier has not talked about at all.
Was that the main strategy for this campaign, healthcare?
I think the main strategy was to talk about the basics that Doug Ford and the PCs had ignored. So healthcare was far and away the biggest issue. Bonnie was clear since November, before the campaign even started, that her #1 priority was getting people a family doctor. 2.5 million people in Ontario don't have a family doctor. So yes, the party leaders can agree on tariffs, but what they clearly don't agree on is the healthcare crisis, and Bonnie was consistent from day one that she was the person to take that on.
Yeah, we'll find out if that resonates in about an hour. Thank you, Matt.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, Lena, back to you.
All right, Nathan, thanks so much. Polls close in less than an hour. Here we go. Stay with us as we continue to bring you live coverage of the 2025 Ontario election. We'll be right back.
Exclusive you will only see here is our CTV Power Board with our very own Nick Dixon. And Nick, I understand you have more on how the threat of tariffs, we've been talking a lot about that tonight, might impact this election.
Yeah, we are so fortunate to have this exclusive, level of data, really giving you a sense of what's happening. We're going to take you to southwestern Ontario, right at the Detroit River border area. This is the Windsor West riding here. Lisa Gretzky is the NDP incumbent in this riding here. Is she going to be in a fight? Because the rest of her riding is surrounded by PCs, and of course, Doug Ford has pitched this as a campaign to come out against the Trump tariffs. Let's bring Rupen back in from Environics Analytics to break down kind of what this riding looks like and why they may be voting certain ways tonight, Rupen.
Yeah, well, Nick, it's interesting because this riding has a lot of different voter segments present. It did go NDP last time. We're going to focus on a couple of segments. The modest metros. These are struggling younger people in the downtown areas in the riding. They predictably voted NDP last time, as they do in the rest of the province. So they're probably a reasonably solid group of supporters. The Metro Boomers were interesting. So these are older retirees. They typically voted PC in a lot of the other rest of the parts of the province, including in other border towns and industrial towns. They voted NDP here. So the NDP did a good job of convincing them to support them. You could see here by some of the stats, incomes are quite a bit lower than the provincial average. 132 is the provincial average. Home values are modest, but you're seeing 18% of households were worried that they would run out of food in the past year.
It's almost 2 in 10.
They're quite surprising numbers, and a lot of people are worried about tariffs. Their jobs are at risk 15%, which is above the provincial average. There's high financial vulnerability, so the ability to withstand a financial shock if your income drops. The other thing that's going to be important, though, and we go back to those boomers, healthcare is going to be important as they age. There's a high proportion of people in this riding that don't have a healthcare provider, a regular healthcare provider. A lot of people who have fair or poor health conditions, so they're going to be looking for healthcare. There's still a high level of pride in the healthcare system, so there's a bit of that Canadian patriotism coming out. But we'll see if the NDP can hang on to these voters.
So keep in mind, Lena Michelle, it was close last time. NDP 42, PCs 35. Will they go healthcare or will they go with Trump and the tariffs? That would be a Ford vote. We'll find out as the polls close in less than 45 minutes from now. Back to you.
We'll find out soon enough. Yeah. Nick, thanks so much. Fascinating data as well. You're watching CTV Election Ontario 2025. We're back with more live coverage right after this.
Tired of not sleeping well? The problem is your
Vaughn Morris is in the heart of Ford Nation tonight at PC Party headquarters, talking to a key player on the Ford team.
This is the man who has run this whole operation. This is Progressive Conservative campaign manager Corey Teneycke. Corey, how did you approach this campaign?
Well, very different than a lot of other ones in that it's been largely dominated by typically provincial issues. The sort of economic crisis and perhaps even sovereignty crisis associated with Donald Trump's presidency was sort of something I think most people didn't anticipate, and it's really dominated, I think, a lot of the campaign, and that's pretty unusual. I think that's probably a good thing. It's pretty unusual, but it's made for a very unique campaign. Also, a winter campaign, presents its own challenges, and we've certainly seen some of that today with people trying to get in to vote despite the weather.
You did see some of your rival campaigns try to make something of Doug Ford's record on the more provincial issues like health care, like a lack of affordable housing. Why do you think that those did not cut through in the way that the rivals had hoped that it would?
Well, on some of those issues, while the Premier doesn't score as well as he does on leadership and around the economy and things like that, support for each of the parties around healthcare and each of the leaders around healthcare is almost a three-way tie. So, smart people will disagree about politics and other things, but I don't think the public sees someone with a plan that's any better than what the government has. Some people might, but it's not a majority of Ontarians that feel that there's someone else out there that has a much better idea of how to approach that issue.
And for you, on a day like this moment, where is your anxiety level at right now?
Oh, it's always pretty high around this time because you're waiting to see who actually comes out to vote. A lot of Conservative voters kind of come after work, and so it's sort of between 5 and 9 when the polls close that you see a lot of our vote come out. So I would say it's peak anxiety time right now. So I'll probably be a lot happier or a lot sadder next time you see me.
Okay, well, we'll check in with you again. Michelle and Lena, back to you.
All right, Siobhan, thanks so much. And CTV's Vashi Kapelos is talking to our election night panel this evening. Vashi, this election being held in the dead of winter. Candidates having to go door to door in the freezing cold. Some of these election signs you couldn't even see because of the snow. That's got to impact voter engagement, right?
Well, you do have the sense, and Nick Nanos had some numbers to this effect, that engagement in this election in particular is not where it's been in previous elections, nor is it where it is when it comes to Trump in the prospect of a federal election. So that's kind of interesting. I was thinking about engagement as well as Corey was talking there, Sabrina. I'm here with Sabrina, Nanji, Bill Carroll, and John Moore about, when people are going to vote and that kind of thing. Because you have the gut feeling that there isn't a high level of engagement. It's not just cold, it's not just winter. It was a terrible winter day today. In particular, there's a snowstorm basically across the entire province. I know you've been talking to the parties. What are they telling you about what they're anticipating where turnout is concerned?
Yeah, I think all parties are probably talking a big, confident game right now, but they are saying that, based on the voter IDs and the data they're getting from Elections Ontario, that they're feeling pretty good that their voters are showing up to the polls. But it's, it's crunch time, as we heard Corey say, especially for the Conservatives. And we know that when turnout is lower, it tends to favor the status quo. But I do think that it can also be galvanizing too, right? Like when you see the Conservatives are leading and leading very, healthily in the polls, is that going to galvanize the anti-Ford vote? Is there going to be a vote split there? And so I do think that, this election has been a snap election. There's been already talk about even the advanced polls, and the turnout there was about 6%, not doing so well. 2022 was the record low turnout for Ontario, so I really think getting out the vote is going to be crucial for all the parties tonight.
What's your sense, Bill, of engagement and how that translates to the outcome?
Well, I assumed that voter turnout would be low early this morning, and I was on the air in Ottawa, and I started to get texts from people right away saying, actually, the lineups are huge.
Awesome.
Because the storm was in Toronto heading there, and a lot of people get out. But you heard Brian Lilly of Sun Media earlier talk about some of the ridings that may be up for grabs in Ottawa. This is where ground game matters, right? When the weather turns bad, it's who can get their ground game out. In these close races, can you get grandma to the polls in this storm? Can you encourage people? I know you said you support as you put up a sign, but I need you to leave the house. That's when it really matters, because a few hundred votes can make a difference. And in an area like Ottawa, 1 or 2 seats. This is very important for the Liberals, too. That's been their stronghold, right? 4 of their 9 seats are in that area, and a few of them are up for grabs. So that's what's going to be interesting, is how well did the parties deal with the weather.
John, last word to you on that.
I suspect the turnout is going to be lower, and I think a lot of people probably had the same feeling I did when I opened my front door this morning to go and vote, and I thought, oh, no, do I have to slog through this? But I'm the kind of guy who votes as a form of a fetish, I think. Still, though, could we get Grandma to the polls? Grandma may have still been dealing with snowdrifts from, 10 days ago.
Yeah, the party machines, Lena, are out, though. We know that. We've seen a lot of the internal communication about making sure they do all they can to get people out to vote. So we'll have to see whether the issue set translates to engagement and turnout, but the parties are trying.
Yeah, sure. That's for sure. And all eyes on voter turnout tonight. Panel, thanks so much for this.
I definitely saw some grandmas this morning in my riding, kind of lamenting having to go over some snowbanks. But yeah, there are people there who they're going to vote come hell or high water. All right, we're going to take a quick break. Our live coverage of Ontario election 2025 continues after this short break.
Is about Donald Trump's tariff threats, and that's why he called this election 16 months before he had to. For a closer look at this issue, we turn to the mayors of some of Ontario's border towns. We're joined live now by Windsor Mayor Drew Dilkin and Fort Erie Mayor Wayne Redekop. Good to see you, mayors, and thanks so much for joining us. Mayor Redekop, let me begin with you. Whatever happens tonight is going to have major implications for how we navigate these tricky times. What do you want to see from the next leader of Ontario?
Well, somebody that is going to take a strong position with respect to how we respond to the tariffs. And that could include some of the things that have already been mentioned, such as taking American products off of the liquor board shelves, encouraging municipalities and businesses and individuals to purchase Canadian products, stay aligned with the federal government on some of the issues that they're going to engage in, and really look at facilitating, I would say, things like manufacturing, processing our own raw materials here so that we've got secondary industries so that we can rely more on our own businesses, and of course breaking down the provincial trade barriers would all be things that I think a leader of the provincial government is going to need to look at.
Mayor Dilkins, when you hear Donald Trump say things like, we don't need Canadian cars, how do you react to that? And how do you want to see the next Ontario government react to that?
Well, we've had a whole term of Donald Trump in the past, so there's very little shock and awe about things that come out of his mouth. But certainly, those of us who know the auto industry in a city like Windsor, the auto capital of Canada, we know that he needs Windsor, he needs Ontario, he needs Canada to build cars. The supply chains are so tightly integrated that it's hard to think that any president of the United States wouldn't understand that, especially when they received support from the state of Michigan, and they were able to slightly turn the state red in the last election. But I think what's really crucial here, and certainly the folks in my community are on high alert. They're very concerned about what a tariff would mean, because a tariff on Canada is a tax on U.S. consumers, but it's going to have a very detrimental impact on the livelihoods of many families, and it will happen very quickly if a 25% tariff is put in place. So they want to know the provincial government and the federal government have their backs down here.
Yeah, to say that it would be devastating would be an understatement. Mayor Dulkins, Mayor Redekop, thanks so much for being a part of our special coverage. It's good to have you on. Michelle, over to you.
Thank you, Lena. And since we're talking to the border mayors, let's go to the border. The riding of Windsor West. Travis Fortnum is there. The riding of three-term NDP incumbent Lisa Gretzky. And Travis, Doug Ford launching his campaign in that city.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, a lot of people in this area were happy to see all that spotlight shone down here. I mean, it's usually not as quiet as it appears to be right now, trust me. So a lot of people were happy to see Doug Ford, as you mentioned, started his campaign here. NDP leader Mars Stiles swung through the area. This has been, as Nick said at the Power Board, a strong NDP riding for a little over a decade now. Lisa Gretzky has held the position, the riding since 2014. The PC candidate through this campaign has been a little bit quiet, though. He's been refusing interviews, denying debates. Doug Ford in the area earlier this week saying that this is about the people. It's not about the media, but Gretzky says those people really should hear from the candidate they might be voting for. Everybody's out at the polls now. There's still a little bit of time left, but Windsor West really could go down to the wire here.
Okay. All right, Travis, thanks so much for this. This is CTV Ontario Election 2025. More live coverage and analysis is coming up next.
Play on election night. Let's go to Nick Dixon, who's breaking down how the demographics might play a role in some of the races.
Yeah, and right now, Michelle, we want to show you the closest race in the last election. It's a little north of here in Barrie, Ormodonte, Springwater, which of course is north of Toronto. This is Central Ontario Dissolution. You could see it was all blue, and this riding was blue as well. Doug Downey, the PC incumbent, looking to hang on to this one, but we want to break down the demographics of that riding here, because very interesting splits last time out. Let's bring Rupen back in from Environics Analytics. This was a nail-biter 3.5 or just over 3 years ago.
At one point,
yeah.
Between the two parties, it was between the Conservatives and the Liberals. What we see in this riding is really the Liberals performed so well with a lot of the segments typically that would be runaway conservative votes. So the largest segment in the riding is called Second City Suburbs. These are young families with big mortgages trying to make ends meet, but they've actually done it they're doing it on a fairly good grounding. Modest metros, this is a surprising one. They did vote conservative in this particular riding. The Liberals did quite well, but it was a close race, and they'd be ones to watch because you would expect them typically to swing a little more left in their voting patterns. Yeah. So they hung on pretty well.
In terms of affordability, this is interesting too.
Yeah, they're kind of average household incomes relative to the province. House values also just slightly below average. So a lot of the financial metrics are middle class. They're very much middle of the road overall, although you see some differentiation depending on which segments you're talking about. Healthcare is an issue here. So, a fairly high number of people without a regular healthcare provider, a lot of people requiring healthcare in fair or poor health. That's above the provincial average. And pride in the healthcare system is well below the provincial average. 2/3 of Ontarians say they are proud of the healthcare system. Only 56% in this riding, and that could be, show some tension for the Conservatives.
That could be interesting indeed.
Yes.
And again, just a reminder, 42 PCs, 41. Could they be in for a dogfight again? Doug Downey wants to hang on to for the PCs, keep that 905 belt strong for the PCs. We'll see what happens when the votes start coming in. Back to you.
Yeah, former Attorney General trying to keep that seat blue.
That would be a big upset, certainly. The Liberals, like all the parties, they're trying to grow their seat count big time. Let's go to Nathan Downer at Liberal headquarters in Mississauga. What's the vibe there, Nathan?
Hey, Michelle, I've got Zita Stravis joining me. She's a political consultant. She worked with Bonnie Crombie, and there's a lot of talk about this being perhaps a lower turnout than even the last election. Could that benefit Bonnie Crombie, or could this be a detriment? What do you think?
I think it's really hard when it's a snap election. Ontario hasn't seen a winter election in decades, right? So Ontarians aren't used to that. And it took a little while for Ontarians to tune in to what the issues were. But I do think Bonnie Crombie really focused on healthcare, really drove that message home. So we'll see what happens tonight with vote splits. Some weird things happen on certain seats. So we'll definitely take a look at a couple of those 3-4-way races and how they shake out at the end of the night.
And at the end of the night, what are you hoping is the outcome?
Well, I definitely think what we're going to see tonight is Bonnie Crombie increase Liberal caucus. We'll see what the final number is, but certainly we're feeling pretty good tonight.
And what were some of the biggest challenges that you faced in this snap election?
I think one of the biggest challenges was that we had tariffs. It's really hard to break into the media cycle with Trump, and I think the Ford campaign called the election for that very specific reason. But I do think our campaign did a really good job in putting healthcare on the forefront and getting people to really reflect on, do they want a stronger healthcare system over the next 4 years, or do they want the status quo?
And as a consultant, are you saying, hey, healthcare is the #1 issue, or is this coming from feedback from voters? Where are you getting that idea?
I think if you ask any Ontarian, they're worried about if they have a family doctor, when they're going to retire. Many people are still looking for family doctors. They're relying on nurse practitioners, and we see our hospitals across the province full and overflow, and that's top of mind for everybody across the province. And I think that Ontarians were really concerned about that, and that was one of the top issues we heard at the door.
Yeah, for sure. Bonnie Crombie promising every Ontarian getting a family doctor in 4 years if she wins. We'll see if that happens. Zita, thanks for your time. Michelle, back to you.
All right, Nathan, thanks so much. Nathan Downer in Peel Region. Let's stay in Peel now. The provincial government making a lot of decisions that impact municipalities. And for that reason, the mayors of Peel are watching this race very closely. For more on this, we're joined live now by Mississauga Mayor Carolyn Parrish, who replaced Bonnie Crombie after she stepped down to run for the Liberal leadership. We're also joined by Brampton's Mayor Patrick Brown. Mayor, it's good to see you, and thank you for joining us tonight. Mayor Brown, let me begin with you. You have backed Doug Ford in this election. It's no secret that there is a lot of acrimony between you and Bonnie Crombie. You think she's not the right choice. You've been really vocal about that. Tell me more about your position.
Well, I think Premier Ford has done a good job. From a Brampton perspective, we've got a new hospital being built. We've got a tunneled LRT, a med school. So we're very pleased that he's been able to see real tangible progress in our community. Conversely, I've worked with Bonnie Crombie for 7 years, where I worked closely with her, and I found her policies towards policing, towards safe injection sites, to be reckless. A history of tax increases. She drove business out of Mississauga. That's the last thing we need when Ontario is facing the threat of Trump's tariffs. I'm glad we have a new mayor in Mississauga because Mayor Parrish, I think, is turning the corner, and we're seeing more of that aggressive economic development that the city needs.
Okay, Mayor Parrish, I'm seeing a lot of expressions coming from you. Look, I've been listening to you on the campaign trail as you react to these leaders and their pitches. At first, you said you were staying out of it, and then yesterday you penned a letter to residents in Mississauga encouraging them to vote, but you also talked about this relationship that you share with Doug Ford, and you called it a productive one. Is that an endorsement?
No, that's not an endorsement, but it's the truth. I've had a very good relationship with Premier Ford. He's been really good to Mississauga. He's helping us economically. He's helping us with housing. He's always there when we need him. He's doing a good job.
Mayor Parrish, when you talk to residents in your city, what do they tell you? What is the #1 election issue?
In our city, the #1 election issue is housing. We have 1 in 13 people using a food bank because they can't pay their mortgages or they can't pay their rents. We don't have sufficient housing for the number of people we have here, and we have to start making more housing, and we have to do it right away.
Okay, Mayor Brown, I want to hear about your priorities too, but I also want to ask you about your mother-in-law, Sylvia Gualteri. She's running against Bonnie Crombie in Mississauga, East Cooksville. Have you talked to her tonight? How's she feeling? How's the team doing?
Well, I'm certainly proud of her efforts. This is the first time that she's running. I think she's certainly the underdog, but I think it's going to be a very close race. And it speaks to the fact that, you know, Bonnie Crombie has a very controversial record in Mississauga. I don't know what's going to happen, but I think it's pretty clear in Bonnie Crombie's own backyard, there's going to be some pretty large progressive conservative wins in Caledon and Brampton and Mississauga. I think the only seat they have a chance in is the leader's own seat. And so when you can't win in your own backyard, when the people that know you best are not your fans, that's usually an indication that's not very positive. So I'm hoping Sylvia's successful tonight, and I think she'd be a great MPP.
Okay, 30 seconds to go here. Top priorities in Brampton. Take it away, Mayor Brown.
So healthcare, we got to get the second hospital built. The groundbreaking is March 28th. We open our med school this summer. The tunneled LRT we're going to build over the next 7 years. Can't wait for that timeline to be crystallized. But we got a lot of projects on the go. And protecting industry. I'm really worried about these tariffs and what it means for the manufacturing sector. So we got to protect Canadian jobs.
Mayor, it's good to see you, and thanks so much for being with us tonight. I know you'll both be watching very closely. Thanks so much.
Absolutely.
Okay, an interesting conversation, and Michelle, over to you for now.
Well, let's head to the riding of Mississauga, East Cooksville tonight. Lindsay Biscaya is there, Liberal leader Bonnie Crombie, hoping to win a seat in the legislature tonight. It's hard to lead when you don't have a seat in the legislature. A lot riding on this riding, Lindsay Biscaya.
Yeah, this is actually a very interesting riding, Michelle. When you look at Mississauga, East Cooksville, we're actually not where Bonnie Crombie is at the moment. We are at the PC candidates area where they're going to be watching these results come in. Sylvia Gualteri, and we just heard Mayor Patrick Brown speaking about her. She is a strong opponent to go up against Bonnie Crombie, and obviously the PC party looking for someone strong who can maybe take over that seat, keep it away from Bonnie Crombie, keep her out of the legislature. Sylvia Gualteri has very deep roots in the PC party. She is the mother-in-law to Brampton Mayor Patrick Brown. She is the sister of Rudy Cazzetto, who is the former sitting member in Mississauga Lakeshore. He also is seeking re-election tonight. And she's been working with the PC party for a very long time in organization and funding. She also has a very long background in investment as well, just aside from politics. But it's going to be really interesting to see how this all shakes down tonight. You heard Mayor Patrick Brown saying that she is the underdog, but obviously a strong contender. We saw PC leader Doug Ford in this riding yesterday with Sylvia Gualteri campaigning in the Polish community. Obviously, Bonnie Crombie very vocal about her Polish roots. So the PC party very much looking to take voters away from Bonnie Crombie and instead have Sylvia Gualteri come out as the winner tonight. We know that the previous MPP in this riding not seeking re-election. So Michelle and Lena, this seat very much up for grabs tonight.
Lindsay Biscaya live for us in Mississauga tonight. Hey, 19 minutes till the polls close. This is CTV Ontario Election 2025. More live coverage is coming up next.
on the campaign trail, NDP leader Marit Stiles talked about health care, the housing crisis, and affordability. She also talked about Doug Ford. Let's go live to CP24's Bakari Savage at NDP headquarters with more on that message. Bakari.
Okay, good evening, Lena. So we are here. I'm standing right by our Joe. They're waiting to open the doors right now. Election night headquarters for the NDP. Let's have it. We are at the Great Hall. This is on Queen Street West. You can see the line of NDP supporters as they have been waiting to come in right here. Okay, let's talk to you right now. May I get you to say your name and your support for the NDP?
Oh, yeah, sure. My name is Andrew Caleb. I have a YouTube channel right here, as you can all people see. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel for more content. The reason why I voted for NDP is because I'm a big fan of NDP. And I'm going live tonight, folks. So please look out for me. And Twain Caleb, take a look at this. Bye now.
Okay, thank you very much. And see, look at that energy, a lot of support here. So we have everyone else. They're waiting to come in. While we do that, we're going to start walking up the stairs here. This is Janelle Brady. She is the president of the Ontario NDP. Okay, Janelle, first off, you see these supporters, they're walking in right now. They've been waiting. What does this say to you?
Well, it says there's lots of support out there. There's lots of energy and momentum for the NDP and for Marit Stiles under her leadership.
Okay, so Janelle, let's continue to walk into, the election night headquarters for the NDP. So let's talk about where we have been in terms of how we got to tonight and where you were earlier today.
Well, I was knocking on doors in my home riding of Humber River, Black Creek, pulling the vote for Tom Rakocevic, volunteering today, just to speak with a lot of supporters, a lot of voters, and remind them to get out and vote. And that we've been experiencing a lot of that, a lot of people who are excited for a better vision for this province.
And along with that, Janelle, these signs right here, they say re-elect Marit Stiles, and that is going to be the theme of tonight. So with that, sending it back to you in the studio.
Bakari, feeling the excitement. Yes, close to polls closing. Appreciate it. Well, now we're joined live by Tim Hudak. He was an MPP for more than 20 years, including 5 years, you will remember, as Ontario PC leader. And after his time in office, Hudak was the CEO of the Ontario Real Estate Association. Tim, great to have you on election night. Let's talk about Doug Ford and the fact that we have watched with each election, he and his party grow his seat count, and he is poised to potentially do that tonight. What has the secret been to his success thus far?
Clarity and purpose, a really strong campaign team led by a guy named Corey Tanaik, and I think a strong set of candidates. They've done a good job as government. They're going to be reelected. And Michelle, it's historic, right? This is the first time in Ontario's history you've had a premier elected with 3 majority governments and actually increasing the number of seats he has each and every time. I was happy to have a front row seat. I saw him in action in Washington, D.C. I think he's the guy to lead our province going forward during some pretty tough times.
Well, you mentioned the trip to Washington, D.C. There's been a few during this, what is a short campaign. Do you think that helped just, get his image out there as somebody who's doing something about this tariff threat?
It certainly helped in this respect. And Michelle, I'm now a partner at Council of Public Affairs. We did polling, and the top issues in Ontario when we polled were healthcare, affordability, housing, jobs, and the economy. Trump and the tariff threats were number 5 on the list. But when we saw who could handle those issues better, the other 2 leaders, Bonnie Crombie and Marit Stiles, did not emerge above Doug Ford. I think the bottom line for tonight for his campaign and his success, Michelle, is when you're hitting a rough road, when things look pretty tough on the road ahead, you want experienced and strong hands at the wheel, and people will overwhelmingly say that's Premier Doug Ford.
I find it so interesting what you mentioned there, because when you are in power for 7 years, there is baggage. You have a track record, and the opposition parties were certainly hammering some issues that do matter to people, like healthcare and housing. But does it matter tonight?
Often we see after election campaign that media and political pundits think their job is to walk down the hill and shoot the wounded. I'm not going to do that. I thought Marit Stiles, Bonnie Crombie, very effective leaders, but honest to God, Michelle, it's like taking on Wayne Gretzky and the Edmonton Oilers in the heyday in the 80s. Like, no, if I can still say good things about Wayne Gretzky, nobody could stop them. Doug Ford had a strong record. He ran an excellent campaign. They were strategically smart in how they talked about the campaign as protecting Ontario, and I don't think any opposition leader could have stood up to them. I do think Merritt Stiles will be back. Bonnie Crombie's seat, though, really up in the air because a lot of blue troops on the ground trying to keep that riding in the Conservative fold tonight.
Tim Hudak, love picking your brain tonight. Happy watching.
Looking forward to it. Have a great night.
Take care. Lean, over to you.
Okay, Michelle, you talked about that political baggage. Is that going to hurt Doug Ford tonight? It's such a big question. We're going to go over to Nick Dixon now. He is live at our Power Board with more on who Ontarians preferred as their premier.
Yeah, we're going to pick a pretty big brain right now. Nick Nanos from Nanos Research is going to come in, and he's been polling throughout the campaign. This is the preferred premier poll, and we can see, Nick, this line here fairly straight throughout the campaign.
You know, absolutely. You know, we do know from the polling that a lot of people basically vote on leadership, and, you know, basically a clear advantage for Doug Ford over Bonnie Crombie throughout the whole race. And, you know, basically the same type of margin converts into the ballot numbers also. So, you know,
Up and down, right at the very end. That was interesting between Doug Ford and Bonnie Crombie.
Yep.
In the meantime, the horse race here, let's talk about this because there's a few events we want to highlight throughout the last 27 days.
You know, you think of the benchmark, Nick, at around 40%. You know, Doug Ford calling the election because of Donald Trump and tariffs. You know, maybe we could say that Ford is the main opponent, but, you know, that being kind of the first key moment, and, you know, still, you can see a 13 to 14 percentage point advantage at the beginning of the campaign. And, you know, then we hit the visit to
the first visit
to Washington, D.C. And, you know, do you see the first compared to many? You know, how many times do we see a premier leave the province during a campaign? Didn't hurt him because numbers are still good. You get to the debate. We know that the debate wasn't really a big factor. Only about 1 of 20 people in Ontario said they voted based on the debate. So still a clear advantage for Doug Ford. Fast forward to the platform, right? And so, you know, the platform's out. This is a risk period, but look at the close of the campaign. You can see, you know, Doug Ford, you know, 47.5%. If you think of where he was in 2022, he was at around 40% or 41%, you know, significant advantage. Big question is, how will that 29 and 16
where does that
convert into
translate
seats?
to? Exactly. We'll be finding out in about 10 minutes' time. Michelle, Lena, back to you.
All right, Nick, here we go. 10 minutes to go. Thanks so much, and stay with us as we continue to bring you live coverage of the 2025 Ontario election.
Any moment now. Let's go to our Natalie Johnson, who is in the riding of Toronto St. Paul's tonight. That's one to watch, Natalie.
Hi, Michelle. That is one to watch. I can tell you it's been a steady stream of voters heading into this polling station here all evening. It got busier around the dinner hour as people were coming home from work, and then quieter now that the rain has started. We know that the weather will likely be a factor in voter turnout in swing ridings like this, the slush and the snow. However, you have teams from the parties getting out the vote, pulling the vote at the very last minute, hitting the doors of supporters as they try to convince people to go to the polls, knowing that every vote matters. Here in Toronto, St. Paul's, this was a Liberal stronghold for many years until it was won by Jill Andrew for the NDP back in 2018. She won it again in 2022. Now you have Stephanie Smythe, a former CP24 anchor, vying for this seat for the Liberals. As for the PCs, we know there are other ridings to watch in Toronto. All of their seats in Toronto at this point have been Etobicoke, North York, and Scarborough. They are likely trying to make some inroads closer to the core. There are a couple others to mention where there is no PC incumbent, including Eglinton Lawrence, just to the north of us, and York Southwest, and where the Premier's nephew, Mike Ford, is no longer running again. So as the PCs make their final push in the final moments before the polls close, we are going to be watching these 416 ridings very closely. Back to you, Michelle and Lena.
All right,
Thank you,
Natalie
Natalie.
Johnson, thank you.
Well, dealing with Donald Trump's tariff threats will be a major focus of the next government, whoever it is, but it'll be a delicate balance when it comes to navigating the cross-border issues and other critical issues in this province.
And for more on this, we're joined live now by John Tory, former Toronto mayor and former leader of the Ontario PCs. Mr. Tory, good to see you, and thank you for being with us in studio tonight. We are just getting word of voting delays in a number of polling stations. This is 9 polling stations, to be exact, I'm getting told. This is to be expected. Voting irregularities are not uncommon on election night,
No.
right?
I mean, when you have a winter election, when you have any election, and this is 9 polls out of thousands that are across the province, so I don't think it's anything to worry about. It might delay the results in a couple of ridings, but I don't think it's going to change the result, which I think will have a pretty early indication of what's going on here. That's what I think where we're headed.
What are you watching for tonight? What's top of mind for you?
Well, I mean, I think it's the things everybody said. I've been listening to and watching your broadcast. I think it's, really going to be the race for second place. I think Doug Ford will come close to cracking 90 seats, which is a huge majority government. I think too big, because caucus management becomes a problem. I think then we have to see, I've predicted, and I could be wrong, that the Liberals will finish second this time and that Bonnie Crombie will win her seat. But I think both of those are going to be very close affairs. And so I think those are the stories of the night. And then there's individual ridings where there are very interesting races going on. But I think it's really the race for second place.
And if Bonnie Crombie does not win a seat in the legislature tonight, what do you think that means for her in the party?
Well, it's a problem. I mean, she could say, I had a year and it's my first election and so on. I went through this. I mean, I was the leader of the party on election night. I didn't win the seat. I didn't lose a seat, but I didn't win the one I contested. And it was a problem. And it's destabilizing, and especially if the party's done better, for her not to be there is a problem. But we'll have to see how that goes. It's a big decision for her and a big decision for the party, and she's got to make it almost instantaneously when the results come in the next, hour and a half. So it's going to be a big night, one way or the other.
Former Tory leader and mayor of Toronto, John Tory, great to have you in with us on election night. Appreciate it. We're taking a quick break when we return.
You are a traveler, and you're already dreaming of
before the polls close. Nick.
Yeah, it's getting right there. It's about to get real, isn't it, Lena and Michelle? And so what we're talking about tonight, we're going to be looking at a lot of data, of course. We've talked about that. This, of course, is our map of dissolution. But what we're going to show you right now are some of the battleground ridings that we're going to be focusing on. So you can see them kind of spread out across the province. These are some of the ridings where there could be some of the closer races, maybe some seats being flipped. So let's give you some examples of what we're talking about here. So first, we're going to move to Haldimand, Norfolk. Bobby Ann Brady, an incumbent. She actually was associated with the former MPP, but the party chose Amy Martin instead. That's going to be an interesting one. Could an independent actually win and retain a seat? So that's Haldimand, Norfolk in southwestern Ontario. Sarah Jama was kicked out of the NDP caucus a couple of years ago by Marit Stiles. Robin Lennox taking the NDP banner there. What's going to happen in Hamilton Centre? That will be interesting to follow as well. Also in the 905, Lena, of course, you were just talking to Sylvie Galtieri. She, of course, is Patrick Brown's mother-in-law, and she is taking on Bonnie Crombie, leader of the Liberal Party. Keep in mind, Doug Ford was campaigning in that riding just yesterday. Vince Caspera, Michelle Cooper, and Eglinton Lawrence. That could be an interesting riding to watch as well. We'll be watching this race very closely, likely to be one between the PCs and the Liberals. And as we take you over to our following riding in Etobicoke Lakeshore, we highlighted this one a little bit earlier. This was a very close race last time around. Lee Fairclough, pardon me, back at it again, back in the running. She has stayed very politically active since the 2022 race. So could she try to take it out from Hogarth? We'll find that out as well. And Alexa Gilmore, not the incumbent, but this is an NDP seat in Parkdale High Park as well. As the results come in, we'll see if Alexa Gilmore holds that orange banner for the New Democrats. Michelle, Lena, back to you.
Minutes to go before polls close. Nick, thanks so much for this. And our coverage continues right after this.
A CTV News special presentation.
It is 9 o'clock and polls are now closed across all of Ontario.
The political landscape in this province is about to take shape.
And we'll be with you all night to watch it unfold.
This is CTV Ontario Election 2025.
We'll do whatever it takes to protect Ontario.
We fight for every single job.
No new taxes and no tax increases.
We think Ontario needs and deserves more green voices at Queen's Park.
I hope they do whatever they say they're going to be doing.
People are polarized.
I'm just concerned that Canadians get help when they need it.
Canada's been very bad to us on trade, but now Canada's going to have to start paying up.
We need a mandate from the people to fight against Donald Trump's tariffs.
The Ford government is wasting so much money.
Is your life more affordable today than it was before Doug Ford? And clearly the answer to that is no.
Doug Ford has quit his job and Bonnie Crombie has quit the fight.
The Ontario legislature dissolved less than 1 month ago, kicking off a frigid February campaign. Tonight, we'll find out if this unusual timing has paid off for the Progressive Conservatives and whether their political opponents can make any gains.
And we are off from CTV News headquarters in Toronto and all across Ontario.
Party leaders have been battling each other as well as the bitter cold, all fighting for your vote. Good evening, I'm Michelle Dubé.
And I'm Lena Latifat. Whether you're watching, listening, or streaming, this is the place to be. Results, reaction, along with exclusive insights and data you won't find anywhere else.
We have a full team here in studio. CTV's chief political correspondent Vashi Kapelos is here alongside Sabrina Nanji, Bill Carroll, and John Moore. They're going to be following the key races and breaking down everything as the results come in. And those numbers are going to appear on the bottom of your screen. And if history is our guide, we can expect first results just moments from now.
Yeah, could be very quick. We also have journalists at all the party headquarters and right across the province, tracking all the results as they come in and figuring out what those results mean for you and your family. So let's see and set the stage for what's to come. Nick Dixon is at our power board helping us understand the results as they come in tonight. Nick, there is a lot to watch for.
There is indeed. Here's the key number you're looking for. It's the race to 63. That is majority territory. That is what's required for majority government. If you win 63 seats, one of those parties, you are forming the next government as a majority government. Let's take a look right now at the seat projections coming in from the CTV decision desk here based on polling data and, of course, past performance here. So you can see right now, Doug Ford's PC's minimum 58. That's only 5 away from majority territory right now. The maximum at this point is 87, but as your votes are counted and as these ridings tighten up a little bit, these numbers could shift a little. Here's the interesting thing. It looks very much like Doug Ford's on his way to a win. The Liberals at a 12 minimum right now. That is what's required for full party status at Queen's Park. That's the minimum at this point right now. 36 is the maximum. It's going to be very close at this point between the New Democrats, 14, 34. This could tighten up as well. Will both parties maintain full party status? Very much looking like Doug Ford is on his way to a majority win potentially, although it could be a minimum, and then we could see what happens for the second and third place. Again, this is all what they're looking for, and as those votes come in, Michelle and Lena, this is the number to watch.
Oh, we will be watching. And now that the polls have closed, guess what? The results are starting to roll in. Let's take a look at the first results of this election night in Davenport. This is NDP leader Marit Stiles riding. She is expected to win her seat there tonight. And Paulo Pereira hoping to perhaps turn the riding orange. Nick Pavlog for the PC party.
Yeah, that's a pretty safe riding for the NDP. This is a pretty safe riding for the Greens. We're taking a look at Guelph now, where no surprise, Mike Schreiner has the lead there. He has about 548 votes. Robert Cool in second place, but it's looking good for the Greens there.
Eglinton Lawrence is one to watch. You'll notice no incumbent here. Michelle Cooper for the PCs, Vince Gasparo for the Liberals, Leah Taiso. It's still early. We got one of 76 polls reporting a slight lead for the PCs there.
Don Valley North, former Toronto City Councillor Jonathan Sow has the lead here for the Liberals. Only one poll reporting those so early. Vincent Key, you may remember him. He's running as an independent. He was kicked out of the PC caucus for allegations of Chinese election interference. We'll keep a close eye on that.
Toronto Centre, Kristen Wong-Tam, a former councillor, is the NDP incumbent. This is definitely an orange riding. We'll have to wait and see how things play out as more polls roll in.
Okay, let's take a look at Willowdale. Bit of a political rematch here. The incumbent, PC's Stan Show, in second place right now. Paul Segale certainly looking for a comeback. He ran in this riding before. He does appear to have the lead.
Over to Don Valley East, Adil Shamji vying for a second term. He is from the medical field, holding the riding for the Liberals. Roger Gingrich hoping to perhaps turn it blue. And stand by. Guess what? We're hearing from the CTV News decision desk that a call is imminent. This campaign of winter 2025 about to reach its culmination.
That was quick. Doug Ford and the Progressive Conservatives sparking an early election, banking on good polling and the threat of U.S. tariffs. His political opponents saying the whole thing was unnecessary. So, did Doug Ford's gamble pay off? We are about to find out.
And we have breaking news. The CTV News decision desk is already declaring a PC win.
Doug Ford gets a third straight mandate. Let's go straight to PC party headquarters. Our Siobhan Morris is standing by there. Siobhan.
Well, this certainly was an expected result in terms of a majority win. The question, of course, will be how big that majority will grow to. I spoke earlier with the campaign manager who said this was an unusual campaign, one that focused more on international affairs than provincial ones, something that we just don't see very often in Ontario. We saw political analyst Scott Reid talk about the likelihood of a monster majority here. We've seen seat projections close to 100. That would be unheard of in Ontario. Also very unusual to see a party in power this long and continue to, over a cycle of elections, grow their seat count. We are seeing just Doug Ford not be slowed down by any criticism, files that his critics think that he has mismanaged. So again, it looks like a third majority for Doug Ford.
All right, Siobhan Morris live at PC Party headquarters, where there's going to be a very big celebration there again. Following breaking news, CTV News is declaring a PC victory, and we're now looking at live images coming to us from Etobicoke. The Ford family watching these results very closely tonight.
Doug Ford keeping the keys to Queen's Park. He said he wanted another mandate. The question now is, will he get an even stronger mandate than the one he had in 2022?
Yeah, let's turn to our panel for reaction to this. Vashi, this is not a total surprise. And now we wait, as Michelle said, for the big declaration. Is it a majority or a minority for Doug Ford?
Yeah, I mean, take a moment, all of us, I think, to give Doug Ford his due, right? This is a huge historic moment, a third mandate for the Progressive Conservatives. And though, you know, it's being called very early.
Vashi, stand by.
Keep going, yeah.
Because
Here
guess
we
what?
go.
Our CTV decision desk is about to make yet another call. Let's find out what it is. Take a look.
And we have breaking news. CTV News is declaring a PC majority. Doug Ford not only gets a third straight mandate, he gets another majority. We're going to take you back to PC Party headquarters. Siobhan Morris following the latest reactions. And there is Doug Ford and his family reacting to these results. Siobhan.
We just saw a round of applause, cheers go up here at PC Party headquarters, as you could hear it now too, again with those images of Doug Ford on the screen here at the PC Party headquarters. This is what the PCs had been hoping for in calling this election early, that they could strengthen their majority and return themselves to Queen's Park for a third majority, extending their ability to hold power in the province of Ontario. You heard Doug Ford talk about wanting to have a mandate to outlive and outlast Donald Trump in his presidency. He will get that tonight with a mandate from the people of Ontario, something that he says he needed to unleash tens of billions of dollars in stimulus, all kinds of economic help, should tariffs hit as we are expecting them to, whether it be next week, next month, who knows when, you know, the way Donald Trump talks sometimes. But Doug Ford says that's part of why he thought this election was necessary, to really give stability to the people of Ontario so they know what to expect here at home.
Siobhan Morris in Ford Nation tonight. And wow, was that a record? Let's go over to the panel, because what was that? 908.
Yeah, 908, 906, you made the first call.
Yeah.
I think we had some people on the panel winning some bets over that one. Yeah, it was early, but like I was saying, you know, give Doug Ford his due. With Sabrina Nanji, Bill Carroll, and John Moore, a third majority. We're just waiting to see how big of one, Bill. This was a gamble Doug Ford took, a big one, and it paid off.
Yeah, well, we'd heard for months that he was thinking about it. At least he was getting a lot of pressure from the political people, excuse me, to call an early election. And my understanding was that it was the Premier himself who was saying, I'm not sure I want to do that. But this idea that you're going to be punished for calling it early is actually pretty overrated. And his timing was perfect. This story out of the United States and tariffs started to break. He'd already positioned himself as Captain Canada. Incumbency is always powerful, but this is unprecedented. To have been the de facto prime minister in the middle of this election, I feel actually bad for anyone who had to go up against him, because they never had a chance. It was always all about him.
John, how significant a moment is this for Doug Ford?
Oh, very significant. I mean, first of all, Sabrina's been observing tonight, we have the whole business of 3 back-to-back majorities and growing his caucus size in all likelihood today. But I was found one of the compelling things he said on the campaign trail was that he will, as a result of being elected today, still be the Premier when Donald Trump leaves office. And I think a lot of people sort of, you know, that's a very comforting thought, that Donald Trump, hopefully he leaves office. If in fact that
does happen,
yeah, but Donald Trump's out of office, and we survived the maelstrom.
Yeah, Sabrina, like you had said at the outset of this program tonight, and of course our colleagues, it does appear to be a race for second place right now.
Yeah, I'm looking at the Elections Ontario live results coming in, and it seems like the NDP and the Liberals might be able to pull off, you know, recognized status, which is going to be a huge deal for the Liberals in particular. Obviously, they've been sidelined since 2018, but I think the real question is Bonnie Crombie going to be able to pull off the win in Mississauga East Cooksville?
Yeah, that might take Lena and Michelle a little bit of a longer amount of time to figure out, maybe, than the clear mandate that Doug Ford's already received.
Okay, bashing panel, thanks so much for this. And it's not looking good for Bonnie Crombie. She's struggling a little bit. Let's pick up on that. Let's go to Nathan Downer, who is at Liberal Party headquarters with the latest reaction there. How are they feeling over there about this, Nathan?
I think overall feeling pretty positive. I've got Tyler Meredith joining me. He's a consultant, worked with Bonnie Crombie's campaign. Last election, you finished with 8 seats. You had 9 at dissolution. We're already seeing 16. You've made some progress.
Absolutely, and we may still make more progress over the evening. Bonnie's worked extremely hard over this campaign. It's a campaign that we were not expecting to have to run right now. Doug Ford obviously has a majority, but it's given the circumstances put in front of us, so I think we've done very well so far.
Do you think you can catch the NDP?
We will see. There's still a lot of seats to report. There's going to be some important vote splits in Toronto. But look, I will tell you, I've worked in many campaigns fighting the NDP. They're down 9 seats, and they're certainly struggling. They've been trailing in this campaign. Bonnie Crombie is the only leader in the course of this campaign that has increased her support in audiences and on issues all across the board. She's done very well over the course of this campaign.
Of course, Ford wins another majority. Are you surprised? Were you expecting this?
Well, he held a majority going into this election. And remember, we're spending $190 million for this race in order so that he can go back with a majority, right? I'm not sure why we're having this election. It's an election that we're having effectively 2 years early. But look, I think given a very difficult circumstances for this race, just because obviously with tariffs and with everything else going on in the rest of the world, I think we are very proud of our results so far tonight.
And as far as number of seats you're hoping to win, what number are you guys trying to hit?
Well, look, we're happy right now with the fact that we're official party status, and we could be knocking on over 20 seats. We'll see at the end of the night. But look, we've picked up official party status. We've at least gained potentially 7 or 8 seats, maybe more, and I think the night is still young.
All right, thanks, Tyler. Yeah, you can't argue progress has been made tonight, and they're hoping more progress will be made. Back to you.
Thank you, Nathan. And we're watching the results as they roll in that pivotal riding of Mississauga, East Cooksville. At this stage, Bonnie Crombie is trailing Sylvia Galtieri with a lead of 1,100 votes, but 20 of the 64 polls reporting. We'll keep an eye on this. Right now, we want to go back to Ford Nation and Siobhan Morris. Party there tonight?
There is, and I will say there was a big cheer when that board went up showing Bonnie Crombie trailing in her riding here at PC headquarters. Scott Reid, tell me what you're seeing in the numbers as they're rolling in right now.
It's pretty much on track for what the Conservatives thought. You can see that they're picking up some steals from the NDP, particularly outside of Toronto. That's what they imagined. That's what they hoped for. The tail of the tape is going to be between the NDP and the Liberals. That's where it's going to get interesting. A bunch of downtown ridings that are still close. Not a ton of polls in yet. So we'll have to wait and see. The Liberals are thrilled that they've got official party status, but they really want official opposition. So we'll have to wait and see. Maybe a little bit more of an outperformance here tonight based on what we thought for the NDP, given these numbers.
Is it just a matter of having a better ground game, being better at getting people to the polls, or what happened there, you think?
Almost certainly. It'll be interesting to see where the popular vote lines up, but if it's low and if those close seats break to the NDP in Toronto, it will be almost certainly a function of their infrastructure, their ground game, their get out the vote effort. That's what the NDP were telling us would be their election day advantage. We'll have to wait and see. There's still a lot of night to come.
We still have quite a few polls to come in Bonnie Crombie's riding in Mississauga. What happens for her if she doesn't win that riding?
Well, it's a giant question mark. I mean, listen, if she returns the party to official party status, much less if she were to put them in official opposition, I don't know that there's going to be a giant run at Bonnie for leader. I mean, she will have brought the party literally back out of the graveyard, but it's going to be a disappointing result. I mean, the campaign genuinely believes she would win a riding on the basis of her personal poll, her past as mayor and as a member of parliament federally. So they'll be watching it closely. Their fingers are crossed. They want her in the legislature.
So that's definitely one to watch as the night continues to unfold. Michelle and Lena, we'll send it back to you.
Siobhan, thanks so much. And again, we're following breaking news here. CTV News declaring a PC majority. We're going to take you to Nick Dixon now, who's standing by with some House projections for us. Nick.
Yep, so we know, of course, PC majority, Doug Ford, 4 more years. He got what he was looking for here. Let's take a look, though, at potentially what the House could look like when Queen's Park does resume here. So at this point, according to the CTV decision desk and the polling data and voting numbers that are coming in, we're looking at a minimum number of seats of 74 for Doug Ford and the PCs. That would be shy of where they were at dissolution of 79. Maximum at this point, 83. Remember how we talked about how the numbers are going to tighten? You can see how they're tightening already. Interesting, though, in this race for second place, currently the New Democrats on top at this point, maybe retaining official opposition status. We'll have to wait and see to find out that. But this is a very close race. Liberals, as Scott Reid was alluding to, looks like they're going to get official party status with a minimum of 14 seats, max 21, max 27. This is going to be the big race to watch in these races, where the Liberals and New Democrats find their votes and see who does end in second. Green Party, interestingly, Mike Schreiner, we know, already declared his seat. They're looking like they're on track for 2, maybe 3, an independent one. That could be the Haldeman-Norfolk seat as well. But again, these are the projections. We know it's going to be 63 plus for Doug Ford. Plus what? We're going to find out as these votes keep getting counted.
This is a big night for Mr. Ford. Now we're going to head over to Patricia Bowl, who is in the NDP riding, where Mart Stiles is going to be tonight. We know that Mart has won her seat in Davenport as expected. Who do you have there?
So joined here by Jared Walker of Broadbent, and certainly it's been interesting in this room. We heard that loud cheer when Marit Stiles was declared re-elected, followed by some loud boos as the signs went up for the PC majority. Looking at these numbers here, 24-14 leading and elected for the NDP in this race for second place, as people have dubbed it. Would you label this right now a successful evening, or too soon to tell?
I mean, I don't, obviously this isn't the result that we were hoping for. What we've been trying to do since day one, split blue seats to orange and take the fight to Doug Ford. That's what we've been doing since 2018 when we became the official opposition, and that's the yardstick.
What do you think was the struggle in this campaign? Was it as simple as everyone says, that the room reacting a little bit right now, was it as simple as everyone says, that it was so tough to get messages through about healthcare, about education, about affordability, when you have a Doug Ford in a Canada shirt and hat, and people were so focused on the threat coming from south of the border?
I mean, I think Doug Ford called this election at the time he did, with the premise that he did, to distract from his record, which is that for the past 7 years, everything's gotten more expensive. No one can afford rent. No one can afford groceries. The healthcare system is in shambles, and our schools are crumbling. And that's why he called the election, and he knew what he was doing.
But a huge majority, what do you attribute that to?
I mean, a lot of folks staying home. Like, quite frankly, you know, call an election during a winter, the first winter election, and gosh, like, Lord knows how long, you know?
All right, Jared Walker, thank you very much. We do hope to hear from Marit Stiles probably sometime after 10:30 will join us, and we'll hear from the leader of the NDP, re-elected in her riding, and the celebration happening around that here at the Great Hall.
Okay, we can hear the cheering. And Patricia Bowl, thanks so much, live at NDP headquarters tonight. We're going to go over to PC Party headquarters now. CP24's Beatrice Faisman is on the floor speaking with people there. Beatrice, what are you hearing about this big PC majority?
Lena, we're actually in the hotel where PC leader Doug Ford, who I guess is now getting a third term as the leader of this province with a strong majority, according to what CTV News has declared so far. I was in the room when the declaration was made. There was cheering from Doug Ford, from his wife Carla, who was sitting directly beside him. 3 of his 4 daughters on the couch with him as well, along with Michael Ford, his nephew, who did not seek re-election in York Southwestern this time around. Also in the room, his late brother, Rob Ford's 2 children, Stephanie sitting right next to Doug Ford on the couch, and Dougie Jr. standing directly behind as well. Obviously, just a sense of joy in this room, a sense of victory in this room, because it's very rare when a politician gets 3 consecutive majorities. That's not something that happens all the time here in this province. It's not something that happens all the time in this country. And so sitting here just, you know, a couple of kilometers from the Toronto Congress Centre, where Ford HQ is, where Doug Ford will be making his way to celebrate along with his supporters. Certainly a sense of accomplishment, a sense of feeling as though the voters have given Doug Ford the mandate that he asked them for just 28 days ago, when he said, I need your support, I need your vote, and I'm doing this to the slogan, Protect Ontario jobs, help support people across this province in the face of 25% tariffs that are being threatened by U.S. President Donald Trump. So here at the hotel where Doug Ford is watching, along with his family members, a room full as well of supporters as well of Doug Ford, just a sense of jubilation. Now they're just waiting to see how strong that majority mandate is going to be.
Thank you, Beatrice. Wow, the Ford family has really become a political dynasty. This is quite something. 3 consecutive majority governments.
Yeah, I keep saying it, Michelle and Lena, but like, we got to take a beat. Give the man his moment, right? Like this, we don't know the size of the majority, but right now in this political moment in this country, this is you know, a big achievement certainly, and sets up an interesting 4 years ahead. I'm here with John Moore from More in the Morning on News Talk 1010, Bill Carroll from The Morning Rush with Bill Carroll on CFRA, and Sabrina Nanji, who is the founder of the Queen's Park Observer. John, I'll start with you. What did Doug Ford do right in this campaign?
Doug Ford was Doug Ford. That's all he needs to do. I think you can come up with a shopping list of complaints about the first 7 years, in particular the first 2 years, which were really, really rocky. But Ontarians like Doug Ford, and I think they look at this as almost a stewardship. And do we need to change the horse that we're on? Ontarians have clearly said no. So, you know, Doug Ford has the personality, and even when he's doing things, when he's making a mistake or enunciating policy that turns out to be an error and then he pulls it back, Ontarians forgive him.
Even when, Bill, he's being investigated, you know, his government is being investigated by the RCMP, like there was no shortage in his time over the past few years of controversy. But like John says, he was able to, you know, slug it off.
Well, because he's authentic, right? The Ford family has always had that. People laugh at him in politics, or at least did in the early days, that my phone is available to anyone who wants to call. But it actually literally is. The guy does go to Walmart. You know, we just were at NDP party headquarters. This is supposed to be the party of the little guy. Could that guy have been more out of touch? He's talking about inflation and the price of groceries. Great story a month ago. I go to the grocery store and people, even if they don't have a lot of money, take this with them, and they're Googling the tomatoes, and they're willing to pay more for the tomato if it's Canadian, as long as it's not American. The world changed. Doug Ford got that. The NDP clearly didn't.
Let's talk a little bit about both the NDP, Sabrina, and the Liberals, and maybe even more so the Liberals, because a big storyline here was, would they get official party status? It looks like that will be cemented. The secondary story is about Bonnie Crombie's leadership, in whether or not she's actually going to be able to win her seat, and we've been watching closely. Obviously not all the polls reporting, but she is trailing her competitor. Happens to be Patrick Brown's mother-in-law. Like, this is just a savage political drama going on here. What are you going to be watching for as far as how that goes? And does she, you know, can she stick around, let's be honest, if she loses her seat?
Yeah, I mean, I think there will be questions, but I do think that the Liberals will be happy at least getting recognized status. That's going to make their job a lot easier at Queen's Park. You know, you get more resources, more money, more speaking time in question period. But the big question for them is, you know, will their leader be in the House? And the Conservatives have not made this easy for Bonnie Crombie. You mentioned that Patrick Brown's mother-in-law is running there, Rudy Cazzetto's sister, and they, you know, the Conservatives sent like their heavyweight ministers, or, you know, ministers at dissolution there to the riding, like there to fundraise, to canvass, and so they really were going full tilt to make this difficult for Bonnie Crombie. But again, you know, she was a popular Mississauga mayor there. It's not over yet, but it looks like this is really going to be a tough one for her.
She can get busy shopping for a bigger van.
It'll be like a bus now.
There'll be a tariff on it, probably.
They've got enough MPPs. Yeah. All right, we're going to throw it back to the desk, guys.
Okay, Vashi and panel, thanks so much for this. Look at this. We're looking at results from Mississauga East Cooksville, where Bonnie Crombie is currently trailing, currently in second place. Lindsay Biscaya is in that riding of Mississauga East Cooksville tonight, where Liberal leader Bonnie Crombie is hoping to win a seat in the legislature. Vashi was just talking about whether or not she'll survive this if she doesn't win tonight, Lindsay. Where Bonnie Crombie is.
Yeah, I mean, this is really turning into possibly the story of the night, Lena. And I keep looking up because we are all watching our special, eyes glued to the screens up here as these results are coming in. Every time it shows that Sylvia Gualteri has more votes, people are cheering. It gets so loud in here. I think it's really interesting because when we first got here, the mood was more kind of like, yeah, you know, we'll see what happens tonight. Now it seems to be shifting. Of course, it's showing 30 out of 64 polls counted, but many people here are saying, you know, it's early, everyone recognizing that, but very, very much excited that Gualteri is pulling ahead in this race. She, of course, was a bit of an underdog, but the PC party put her in this riding. It was no accident. They obviously felt that she was going to be a strong contender to try to keep the Liberal leader, Bonnie Crombie, from getting a seat and getting into the legislature. So it's still early, but again, we're going to have to wait and see what happens here because this could change a lot of things for the Liberal Party moving forward. We know even PC leader Doug Ford was here in this riding campaigning yesterday, so obviously the PC party putting a lot of resources into this riding to try and ensure that Sylvia Gualtieri comes out on top. I've been told that Sylvia will be arriving soon. Her campaign manager also expected to arrive soon, so we'll try to grab them and speak with them and bring that to you live. But for now, back to you.
All right, thank you so much. And it is worth noting the Liberals tonight are making gains in Nepean. That riding has gone from blue now to red. And I understand we have a new result.
Oh, look at this. Stephanie Smythe elected in Toronto St. Paul's for the Liberals. She has now defeated the NDP incumbent Jill Andrews. Stephanie Smythe, of course, former broadcaster, former CP24 anchor. This is a big victory for the Liberals. They've defeated the NDP there. Toronto St. Paul's, really a Liberal stronghold. They were looking for this one. Bonnie Crombie certainly spent a lot of time in this riding, and it paid off. Stephanie Smythe elected in Toronto St. Paul's. Let's go live to Bakari Savage now at NDP headquarters with the latest reaction, Bakari.
Okay, so we're at the Grey Hall. This is on Green Street West. I'm standing here with Darlene and her son, Jim. Let's talk about this. So we just heard the news. Marit Stiles re-elected the riding of Davenport. Your response?
That's wonderful news. I'm so proud of her, and I'm really happy that she did. I think she's going to do a lot.
And Darlene, you're here with your son. Let's talk about, getting him involved in the NDP process as well. What does that mean?
Actually, he got me into it. Believe it or not, he's always been into politics, and he started showing me all about Marit and what she stood for, and I caught right on, and I believe everything that she stands for, and she's wonderful. She's wonderful.
And let's talk about, looking around this room, there are a lot of young people in this room. What does that show to you about the future of politics?
I think it's great because you need those young voters to come out in numbers, because a lot of times they don't. It's usually the older folks. So it's great that the younger ones are stepping up and starting to vote now.
And, when it comes to the numbers, we see, Doug Ford, the PCs, so have that majority. What does that mean to you?
It's not good, but I'm hoping it was just that because a lot of people didn't get out and vote, which they should have. But it's not good, but I think, he's going to have a battle with Marit beside him there. I think she's going to still push for a lot of things.
What were some of the big issues throughout this election cycle campaign for you and your family?
Well, actually, the fact that she wanted to double the OW and ODSP, and she also is really big for affordable housing, because sadly, I'm on Ontario Works myself at the moment because I was being a caregiver for 20 years, and trying to find a place within my budget was a nightmare. So her being able to, to come up with some kind of affordable housing. There's so many people homeless out there. It's scary.
And what does your future look like now?
Well, we still haven't. Hopefully, he'll call another election and decide that we can get him out again. Yeah, I really don't. I can't believe he's actually got a majority government, really.
Darlene, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. And with that, back to the studio.
Thank you, Bakari. Some disappointment there. There are about 24 ridings up for grabs in voter-rich Toronto with party leaders. They spent lots of time over the course of the campaign. Let's go right now. We're just being told we're going to go to Nick Dixon at our power board. He's been watching basically this province. The colors change and take shape, although, yes, Nick, there's a lot of blue tonight.
There is a whole lot of blue out on the map right.
Let's go to Natalie Johnson, who is there. You're in Toronto. Tell us exactly where you are.
She's in Toronto St. Paul's, where Stephanie Smythe was declared the winner. Natalie.
Yeah, that's right. A big cheer right here. As you can see behind me, Stephanie Smythe, the former CP24 anchor, declared the victor here in Toronto St. Paul's. This was a very contentious riding. We knew it was going to be close between Stephanie Smythe and Jill Andrew, the NDP candidate. Andrew won this seat in 2018 after it was a Liberal stronghold for years. She won it again in 2022. We knew that the red team was vying for the seat here in Toronto St. Paul's. We are expecting Stephanie Smythe to speak here in about 10:15. I'll let you take a look at the room right here as they begin to cheer. Very exciting for Stephanie Smythe and the Liberals as they reclaim this seat that was a stronghold for many years. It was, of course, also a federal Liberal seat for many years. They lost it last year in the by-election, so a turning point for the Liberals here in Toronto St. Paul's. Back to you.
All right, Natalie, thanks so much. Let's set the stage now for what is to come. Nick Dixon is back at our power board now, helping us understand these results as they come in. They've been fascinating so far, Nick. What do you have for
They
us?
certainly have. And yes, again, so we have to mention PC majority for Doug Ford, so 4 more years of the Ford Conservatives in charge at Queen's Park and in Ontario. But we want to take you to some of the nail-biting ridings right now, some of the closest ridings in this province where there are really, in some cases, just a few votes between some of the candidates here. So we're going to start to drill into this right now. So here's what we're showing you. Leading and elected, in fact, at this point, you can see 79. That is exactly where the PCs left off at dissolution. 75. New Democrats down at 24. That would be a drop for them. And as you just saw there as well, the Liberals are up 5 right now to 13. 12 is what you need for minimum party to maintain a party status here. Independents down, and the Greens right on 2 right now. Now let's talk about the closest races at this point, because this is where things could get interesting. You've got people on the edge of your seat. Sault Ste. Marie up to the north here. Chris Scott and Lisa Van Allen. The lead is only 67 votes with 54 of 60 polls in. This one is going to go down to the 60th poll. Just take a look at those numbers. Let's move into the GTA right now. Greater Toronto area, show you another really close riding in the 905 belt, that being Ajax, a little east of where we are tonight. Rob Cernajek from the Liberals only has a 70-vote lead over Patrice Barnes. She's the PC incumbent, hoping to bring out Team Blue in the final 11 ridings or so, 9, pardon me. Hamilton West, Ancaster Dundas, a little west of Toronto tonight. John Demick for the PCs, trying for an upset here. He's got just over a 100-vote lead over the incumbent Sandy Shaw for the New Democrats here. So giving you a sense of just some of the close ridings. And in Mississauga, Aaron Mills, we've been watching Bonnie Crombie's riding closely, yes, as well. But the PC incumbent here, Sheriff Subaway, has an 83-vote lead over Kassir Dar of the Liberals. Again, this is a close one, about half the vote in there as well. So these ones are going to be an example of some of the ridings that are going to come down to really, it looks like the last several votes counted. Again, it's a PC majority. Is Doug Ford Doug Ford and the Conservatives on their way to 79 or more? We're going to find out, but there are, Lena, Michelle, some extremely close races out there.
You know what? There always are. Every
indeed.
election night without fail. Let's go over to CTV's chief political correspondent, Vashi Capello, is over with our panel. Anything surprising you so far tonight?
Well, I think one thing that, listening to Nick, that might be interesting to get into a little bit is the fact that they have not yet been able to increase the size, Sabrina, of the majority. Like, clearly a win, clearly a majority win, a third straight one, you know, a big and successful mandate. But they left things at 79 seats. If they end up with another 79, that's an interesting story.
Yeah, and I guess you could say it's technically even like a smaller mandate, because in 2022 they had won 83 seats, right? And so now we're at less than that. But, you know, the night is not over yet. No. And I think the big question for Ford, who has been saying this entire campaign, he wants a bigger mandate. He needs a stronger mandate to deal with Trump. You know, what is that going to mean for him if he ends up with, you know, a less strong mandate from tonight?
My guess is, Bill, they're going to say, well, it's a majority government, it's a mandate. Your thoughts on what's happening below the graph a little bit, below the big number, meaning you see the NDP losing a few seats, the Liberals picking up a few, but still a lot of things in flux there.
Yeah, and if the Liberals don't have a leader in the House, the size of the mandate is going to matter even less, right? Because, you know, if Bonnie Crombie gets elected, she's in the House, she's increased the size of her party, there's a little more powerful opposition. But still, a majority is ultimately a majority, and Doug Ford can pretty much do what he wants to do, and I think he will. The popular vote will be interesting, too, though, to see what the mandate looks like when you look at it that way.
Well, and even with the popular vote, I mean, you could see, for example, the entire election campaign, John, the Liberals were outpacing the NDP, and the vote efficiency, just as the NDP had signaled, certainly did. It looks at this juncture turn out in its favor.
Nick Nanos was showing us that poll, and the lines were virtually flat, and then the Liberals started to go up, the NDP going down. But clearly the NDP has always been said to have a really solid ground game, so they got out the vote. I think this has to be a bit of a bitter pill for Bonnie Crombie, because they can crow about lifting the seat count to enough for party status in the House, but this is not what she wanted. It's not what the party asked her to do.
No, I think, Sabrina, you know, talking to people on the campaign, as I'm sure you were, their idea of a win was official party status and official opposition.
Yeah, they were gunning for, 20 seats at least. And they had been, feeling confident. I mean, we saw in the last days of the campaign, Bonnie Crombie appealing to NDP voters, saying that you got to pick Liberals if you want the anti-Ford vote. So I think it might have paid off for her in a couple of ridings, especially Toronto. I mean, we saw St. Paul's flip. I'm looking now at Etobicoke Lakeshore. It looks like Lee Fairclough, the Liberals, have taken that over the PCs. And so, yeah, I think they've got some things to be proud of. And, obviously getting recognized status is a huge deal. But there are going to be questions about, how do you navigate running the party when you don't have a seat in the House? And what does this mean for your leadership, right? Will there be a review? Will the knives be out?
Look, I could be even more blunt, Bill. I think tonight, if Bonnie Crombie loses her seat, we're going to be watching to see if she announces she's not going to be the leader anymore.
Well, yeah, I think it's going to be an uphill battle. You look at what's happening federally and the increases that the federal Liberals have seen. Why is she not benefiting from that a lot more? You would have expected that to happen, and it didn't. You also would have expected the Conservatives to maybe see a bit of the hit that the federal Conservatives are taking. That didn't happen. So, obviously the people in Ontario, their mindset is a very different place right now. And Bonnie Crombie's going to have to explain that. And that's a tough one. I thought she looked shaky and amateurish at times. Even on the last day when the Premier was in her riding, she was trying to change the channel to some scandal with a local candidate, and it just wasn't working. She kept avoiding the questions about her own leadership, and that's not authentic. Remember, we had the guy earlier on tonight who said, I have my own YouTube channel.
Yeah, I remember him. Yeah.
Right. Well, that's the world we live in today.
Yeah.
And Doug Ford is the guy who swallows the bumblebee.
I got
And Bonnie Crombie seemed like she wanted to be a politician.
10 seconds left. John, last word to you.
I don't see her resigning tonight, and judging by her character, and also the fact that, who else is going to take over? Who else is going to rebuild this party? So I don't think she's going to resign in the next few days either.
Okay, I'll send it back to you guys.
All right, Bastian panel, thanks so much. The PCs and Doug Ford take another majority, but can they expand that majority? It's such a big question. We're back right after this with more live results and analysis. Stay with us. We'll be right back. News Decision Desk is declaring Marit Stiles and the NDP the official opposition in Ontario. The NDP gets another 4 years of holding Doug Ford and the PCs to account. This is a fascinating storyline. All the polls had Bonnie Crombie and the Liberals in second place, but we're now learning the NDP will be the official opposition once again. Let's go live to Patricia Bull at NDP headquarters for the latest reaction. Patricia.
Well, an election night in Ontario where it appears not a whole lot has changed. Certainly official opposition status for the NDP, despite the fact that they are currently down a few seats. I think a lot of people here would take as very good news, given there was the expectation there would be a huge bounce back for a Liberal Party that has traditionally had so much more support than it has in recent years. And while they did appear to steal a few seats or have here, it is certainly not the night the Liberals had hoped for, and closer to what the NDP had with Marit Stiles re-elected and remaining the official opposition. Now, they were saying here earlier that they do a wonderful job on a bad weather day and a bad weather month at getting the vote out, so they must have had some success in doing that. Obviously, they also had hoped to grow some support, maybe steal some blue seats, take down some of those numbers that you're seeing on the screen that Doug Ford has once again put up. But given what the pundits were saying, given the expectation, you heard it from former Liberal Premier David Peterson, that the Liberals, it appeared, were going to steal some seats at the expense of the NDP. I think for the most part, people here would call this a success, and there was a huge cheer in this room as that official opposition status was declared.
Well, thank you, Patricia. Yeah, let's get some more of that reaction. Bakari Savage is on the floor. Tonight he's been talking with supporters. Bakari, obviously Mari wanted to be the next premier, but she gets the next best thing, the official opposition.
Yep. Okay, so good evening. You just heard from Patricia. She's upstairs. We're down on the floor. We've been down here speaking to NDP supporters as they await the arrival of Marit Stiles. Right now, I have Olivia and Sam. First off, you know, the announcement, you just heard it, NDP, the official opposition. Your reaction?
Oh, I mean, obviously I'm happy, but it was to be expected. I knew Mara was able to do it from the get-go. She's absolutely fantastic, so I was excited, but I knew it was coming.
Yeah, no, it's great to have Marit, leading the party into another official opposition. I think we can, hopefully use this to springboard the NDP as the, voice for the progressives in Ontario.
Okay, so Olivia, there's something that we were chatting about. In 2022, I was covering this watch party, right? You were here as well. That was the same night. Andrea Horwath, she resigned. Now she's the mayor of Hamilton. Marit Stiles took over as the new face, the new leader of the Ontario NDP. What are your thoughts so far from then to now?
Right. So I've got to give a lot of credit to Andrea, right? She was essentially the one that kind of revolutionized the NDP. She brought us from third-party status to official opposition, and she was fantastic in that. And I couldn't be more happy that Marit's the one who's running essentially down that path that Andrea was able to pave. Is that the word? Yeah. But no, I think that this is absolutely fantastic, and Marit has such a sensational kind of approach to the party, and she is so well spoken, and I think she performs incredibly well in all of the interviews and all of the debates, and I think that she's really able to carry us to the end here.
And speaking of carrying you to the end, let's talk about the connection. Are you able to have that personal connection with Marit and have her capitulate what's important to you at Queen's Park?
Absolutely. I think she has a stellar track record, and her record speaks for herself. She cares about the issues. She cares about Ontarians, and I'm happy to support her and the party as a result.
Yeah, no, I mean, listen, I met Marit at Queen's Park last year, and I met her again just a few days ago, and she remembered me, and that's something incredibly important for politicians, to be able to remember who they speak to, and that just speaks to how personable she is with everyone that she meets.
What does it mean to be an NDP supporter today?
Listen, that is an incredible question. It means being able to stick by a party that actually wants to do better for the people. And obviously right now we're in the midst of dealing with vote splitting and a whole plethora of other issues. And it means being able to stand by your values. We're for the people. We're going to help Ontario out. We are there for every single one of the constituents in all of the ridings. And I just think that it essentially means yeah, you're for the people. We are here to make Ontario better.
Sam, do you feel that all of your concerns have been addressed in this election cycle and will be addressed through Marit?
You know, I care about the things that the provincial government can actually work to fix. I care about housing. I care about healthcare. I didn't hear those solutions necessarily coming from the right side of the aisle. So, yeah, I do think that Marit's got the message that we need to actually find the solutions that we can have in Ontario.
Okay, Sam. Olivia, hey, thank you very much for your time this evening. We really appreciate it. Back to you in the studio.
All right, Bakari, thanks so much. Marit Stiles and the NDP get to hold on to that official opposition party status despite trailing in the polls. So how did we get here? Well, let's find out. CTV's Nick Dixon is at the Power Board with more on that, Nick.
Yeah, it's a big storyline, of course, you know, Lena, because, again, Marit Stiles will remain the official opposition leader, even though support and numbers in terms of seats are dropping for her party. So, again, Marit Stiles, official opposition leader. But let's take a look at the seat range potentially. We already know Doug Ford's in Conservative territory, so let's take a look here. The minimum number of seats at this point, according to the CTV decision desk, 23 for the New Democrats. Again, that's down, but that's still more than the maximum that Bonnie Crombie, the Liberals, are at right now. That's 19. You can see how these numbers have tightened again. The maximum for the New Democrats is 27 here as well. So despite the fact that, yeah, Nick Nanos has come on and he's told us the NDP are polling in third place, and Liberals second place, but it's about where their votes are coming from, and the NDP just have a more efficient vote than Bonnie Crombie's Liberals. Nick will explain that in much more detail throughout the program this evening. But this is where we're looking at Queen's Park. There will be another NDP opposition. Looks like the Liberals, they're on the verge of official party status, at least under Bonnie Crombie. 13, 12 is the minimum. But again, Doug Ford has done it again. He's going to take a majority government back to Queen's Park with, again, Marit Stiles as his official opposition leader. Lena, Michelle.
Thank you, Nick. So Doug Ford has the keys to Queen's Park, but will the Liberal leader have access? She has yet to win her seat at this point. And definitely not getting official party status. Let's go to Nathan Downer, who is at the Liberal headquarters tonight. What's the reaction there?
Mixed reaction. I've got Taylor Deasley joining me, and you do want it, you know, official party status. You got that. You want to win this seat. That's a question. How are you feeling right now?
I think let's take a step back for a second and think about the fact that we haven't been an official party since 2018. So that's 7 years where we have not had official party status. So I think number one was getting official party status and getting back into things in the province. And I think that that's something that we're really proud of. It's hard work to rebuild a brand. We had a lot of work to do for the Ontario Liberals, and we've done that, and we're doing that. And it starts in the small building blocks and moving forward and gaining that momentum. And as we're seeing tonight, we flipped Conservative and NDP ridings. We're winning those votes. We're getting those people in. It just takes more time. And I think, Doug Ford knew that, and that's why the election was called now.
If Bonnie Crombie doesn't win her own riding, do you see that as being a bigger deal where she might consider stepping down?
I don't see that happening. I think what we're seeing right now is real momentum, and we're seeing that in the fact that we are an official party now, that we're flipping seats, that we're beating Conservative ridings, that we're winning in NDP ridings, and it shows us that she is the leader to help bring us through and gain that momentum, and she's the person to help bring us forward to the finish line. And so we have more years left to win the hearts of voters, and that's something that we're going to be focused on doing.
And what would the strategy be for the next 4 years?
I think a lot of it is name recognition. Like, Doug Ford has been in office for years. Everybody knows his name, whether you're engaged in politics or not. Marit Stiles has been the leader of opposition already, and so they have that name recognition. Bonnie's really well known in the GTA, but we have a lot of work to do in getting her more well known in the more northern ridings and different parts of the province, and that's something that we've really focused on doing. But we only had 28 days, and it was a snap election. There's only so much you can do, but it's really building that name recognition and traveling across the province and making sure that as many people know who Bonnie Crombie is and what she stands for. So that'll be our priority.
So if she doesn't get a seat in the in Parliament, but at the same time she has official party status, was this a scenario that you talked about and you were considering?
I mean, we always talk about every possible scenario in anything. That's just a part of the strategy, is being aware of every possible outcome. And we were determined to, build up that momentum and rebuild the Liberal brand, and that's exactly what we're doing. It takes work, it takes time, and this is something the Ford government knew was going to happen, and they called a snap election for that reason, because they knew that this is the highest they're going to be in the polls, and strategically for them, they had to call an election in the dead of winter. And so we're aware of that, and we're going to work hard to to regain the trust and hearts of voters over the next few years.
All right, thank you, Taylor.
Thank you.
And of course, the race not over for Bonnie Crombie in that riding, Mississauga East Cooksville. And of course, we're all watching that very closely. Back to you.
Oh, yeah, it's looking real tight over there. Nathan, thanks so much for this. Back in 2022, the PCs picked up 83 seats. Can they do that again this time? Can they pick up even more? Let's go live to PC Party headquarters. Beatrice Baseman standing by with reaction. Beatrice.
Lena, we're just at the hotel where Doug Ford was watching with his family when CTV News and CP24 declared this third straight majority government for him. I've got former leader of the PC Party, Tim Hudak, joining me now live. Tim, what are you looking for now that we're seeing the results come in?
It's the number, right? This is historic. Not only has Doug Ford won 3 majority governments, but it looks like he's going to increase the seats every time. That's never happened in Ontario's history, and deservedly so. He ran a strong campaign, but a very effective premier. And when Ontarians are thinking about, okay, who is going to have the strong hand at the wheel, we got a really bumpy row ahead. Overwhelmingly, they said Doug Ford.
We're looking at Marit Stiles now. She's been officially declared the leader of the official opposition. You know how difficult that job is. It's a job that you did for 5 years. What happens for her now? What does she have to do so that going into the next election, potentially 4 years from now, she really is an even better communicator?
I think Marit's got a lot of talent. I think she's a very energetic, positive communicator, and you know, the second big winner tonight, right? People thought the NDP would be lower. They're coming in a solid second place, so they build for next time. In areas like my own in Niagara, they did very well. They won 3 of the 4 seats there. They went back in Northern Ontario and a bit in Toronto, so you build for the next election campaign. And secondly, you do an honest review. What went wrong? What could we have done better? What if our strategy didn't quite click? But I'll tell you what, though, for Bonnie Crombie or Marit Stiles, it was a pretty tough election environment. It was almost like, you know, taking on Wayne Gretzky and the Edmonton Oilers in their heyday, if I can still talk about Wayne Gretzky. It was pretty inevitable Ford was going to win, but Marit Stiles, number 2 winner tonight.
How tough of a gig is it to be the leader of the official opposition, where you're essentially, your job is quite literally to oppose? So whatever the government's doing, you're supposed to say, no, actually, that's not right. We suggest looking at this a different way.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's an honor to have that pleasure to serve, and I wouldn't trade my days, even though I didn't win and become premier. I wouldn't trade my time in politics for anything. But it is demanding, because your duty is to oppose, to hold the government to account, to point out a different way. It can get you down being negative sometime, but the chance actually to be on the stage, to fight for what you believe in and your vision for the province of Ontario, lead a team, incredibly rewarding.
It looks like the voters bought into what Doug Ford was selling this election, the third election in a row. I mean, when you look at Doug Ford, when he was elected leader 2018, what does the evolution of Doug Ford look like to you, Tim, as the premier of this province?
Yeah, it's certainly different Doug Ford than when you saw elected in 2018 and each subsequent election. He's really risen the occasion. Like, these are times that we have not seen in our lifetime. We're under threat to our greatest trading partner, 500,000 manufacturing jobs that could be lost in our province. Every day you don't know what the president's going to put out on his phone. And we've had a leader here that stepped into a vacuum, not only for Ontario, but for Canada, who has a vision that I hope will catch on in making Canada stronger and the Americans stronger, creating jobs here and there, making life more affordable and stronger defense around our continent. I really hope now that he has an even stronger majority, that Doug Ford's voice will catch on across Canada and help bring us together with the Americans later on this year.
Certainly a unique campaign, Tim Hudak. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much. So we're standing by, see if we can get a word in with Doug Ford as he leaves the hotel and heads over to the Toronto Congress Centre, where Siobhan Morris has been reporting all night long over at PC headquarters. And then we'll be heading that way too to continue the coverage live here on CP24 and CTV News. Back to you.
Thank you, Beatrice. And speaking of our Queen's Park Bureau Chief Siobhan Morris, let's check in with her at PC Party headquarters. We are watching to see if the PCs grow their seat count. It's very possible at this stage in the game, Siobhan.
It is. I just saw the number slip below where we were at dissolution, so that would be a disappointment, I think, to the PCs who've been hoping to grow that number. I want to bring in Scott Reid, though. Scott, you had said that you've noticed something kind of funky about the proportion of the vote and how it's translating into seats looking at the NDP and Liberals.
Well, the big battle that people were watching for tonight was that for official opposition. We know now the NDP have won, and here's the reason why. The NDP receive 18%, as of now, 18% of the popular vote across the province. Right? That's more or less in line with what a lot of the polls are saying. Liberals, almost 30, just a niche under 30%. And the Liberals are trailing by a dozen seats. So that tells you, we've heard this phrase, and people say, well, oh, the NDP have a more efficient vote. Well, you're sure shoot they do, because to pull out twice as many seats on 12% less in the popular vote, that tells you that the NDP machine in those critical ridings came through. Tough number for the Liberals. It's really tough to see 30% and not be able to cash those in terms of seats in the legislature.
How much of that is a result of what we've seen the Liberals really suffer through the last number of years, not having party status, being a party that's building back from the ground up?
It's 100% owing to that, because the party doesn't have any of those sinews. It doesn't have any of that muscle. So when you've got a close riding and you say, well, if we could just get 100 workers to pull people to the polls, we have our vote ID'd. We know we're going to get 30% provincially. We know we got 42% in this riding, and yet they can't actually get that job done. That's the challenge. In the places where they needed to pull that vote, they didn't have the machinery, and that's a legacy of 7 years of being out of government, or out of official party status. The good news for the Liberals, and there isn't an acre of it tonight, the good news is they're back in official party status. They'll have those resources to rebuild and to renew themselves.
If Bonnie Crombie doesn't win her seat, though, even if they do have status, is that something that she would be prepared to give up, do you think?
Her campaign, I was just in contact with them, are insistent. Bonnie has no intention of stepping down, even if she loses her seat in Mississauga. So we'll watch that unfold. I'm not certain that if she returns the party to official party status, there's going to be a lot of pressure for her to step down, but it makes life more complicated. It makes it harder for her to break through if she's not in the legislature. And there's no question, they're very disappointed. They wanted three things. They wanted Bonnie's seat, they wanted official party status, and they wanted official opposition. So far, they're 1 for 3.
So definitely some disappointment, as Scott said, for the Liberals and the NDP in some capacity. We are expecting a lot more excitement, of course, here at PC headquarters when a re-elected Premier Doug Ford emerges. We'll stand by for that.
Siobhan Morris, live at PC Party headquarters. Thanks, Siobhan. This is CTV Ontario Election 2025. More live coverage is coming up next. Stay with us.
Tonight, what can you show us at this hour?
So let's talk about Brampton. You know, Peel Region has been a stronghold for the PCs over the last couple of elections. And look at this, Doug Ford at this point and the PCs, a clean sweep again. Leading or elected in 5. NDPs couldn't pick up. Bonnie Crombie and the Liberals couldn't pick up either. And the Greens, really realistic, weren't necessarily technically in the running considered by most people. But let's talk about vote efficiency. And for that, let's bring in Nick Nanos from Nanos Research, because this is a story of the night here. We can see the vote totals here, and it's like, okay, so Doug is 1, Bonnie Crombie 2, NDP leader Marit Stiles 3, but in fact, at Queen's Park, it's going to be reversed. Can you help explain, Nick, the differences here?
Actually, you know, the other thing is, you know, Doug Ford actually got more votes in this election than in the last election. More Ontarians voted for him this time in terms of the percentage vote. So, you know, he wasn't able to convert that extra advantage into more seats. But check out the NDP. They're actually down about 6 percentage points compared to the last election, and they were able to still do really well. This actually, I think we have to give a tip of the hat to the NDP campaign. They were just much more targeted. They were on point, and they were able to kind of, why don't we just say, they had lemons, and they made lemonade.
They made lemonade.
They made lemonade.
This graph, I love this one for Greater Toronto, Nick.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, when you look at the Greater Toronto area, you know, basically, you know, almost like a coin toss, very close race between the PCs and the Liberals and the NDP. But, you know,
what a difference in seats.
Yeah, absolutely. We're, you know, in terms of the conversion.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we're going to move on to one more set of votes here, and we move to Hamilton Niagara. This is another interesting one here. NDP, 5 seats on 32% of the vote, more than half, and the PCs 38 and 4. That kind of tells the tale too.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, the thing is, you know, what's interesting is that the Ford Conservatives still had the advantage throughout this whole thing. But, you know, the thing is that, you know, the conversion rate, even though they had more popular support, didn't get into the seat count.
So much of tonight is about numbers. That's why we have you here, Nick. We really appreciate this. Michelle, Lena, back to you.
Thanks so much for this, Nick. Let's take you to Guelph now. That is Mike Schreiner territory. That's also where we find CTV's Tony Grace. You know, the Greens have their eyes on Parry Sound, Muskoka. We're now learning that's off the table for them.
That's right, guys. You could probably hear the cheering, Mike, 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 because Green Party leader Mike Schreiner has just arrived here in the room in Guelph. So, as we've declared, Mike Schreiner easily winning his seat here in Guelph. Same with Ashlyn Clancy, his deputy leader in Kitchener Centre. But as you mentioned, what was a very close race in Parry Sound, Muskoka now appears to have gone to the PCs. So that was where the Greens were hoping to pick up their 3rd seat. But, you know, you wouldn't sense any disappointment based on the sounds and the sights here in the room in Guelph, because as soon as Mike Schreiner walked in, this is what you heard. And this is what you heard as the campaign workers were sort of rallying the troops ahead of time before Mike Schreiner's arrival. Look, they're very, very proud of holding on to those 2 seats. It was a big deal for the Greens to get that 2nd seat in the Kitchener Centre by-election at the end of 2023. Mike Schreiner is on stage now.
In 2023, the Ontario Greens made history by electing the 2nd Green MPP in Ontario's history. And I just want to say to Ashlyn Clancy, from the day you decided to run until the moment you joined me at Queen's Park to be the 2nd Green MPP, I've been inspired by your courage, your intelligence, your tenacity, your passion, and your commitment to the people of your riding and to this province. Together, we held Doug Ford's feet to the fire and delivered for our communities. And so I look forward to teaming up with you again to go back to Queen's Park and represent Green voices across this province and to stand up for what's right for our communities and the people of Ontario. You know what? Anyone who thought Ashlyn Clancy's by-election win in 2023 was a fluke was wrong, and we proved them wrong tonight. And we will keep proving them wrong as we build momentum for the Ontario Green Party across this province. Our party is powered by people, And so I say to the people who ran, the people who knocked on doors, the people who put up signs, the people who braved the cold. And I got to tell you what, there were a lot of cold hands and warm hearts out on the campaign trail over the last month. I want to say to each and every one of you from the bottom of my heart, thank you, thank you, thank you for working so hard for the Ontario Greens. Each and every one of you is a local champion, and I'm forever grateful for the work that you do. I also want to take a moment now to thank a good friend, Matt Richter, the deputy leader for the Ontario Greens. Matt has run many times, and this time yet again, he came so close. I know that tonight was not the results we had wanted, and I know they're not the results that Matt wanted. But I want Matt to know that you will always be a champion in my heart. You lead with honesty, integrity, and a commitment to your community. And if there was ever anyone who deserved to be an MPP, it's Matt Richter. Matt, yeah, let's hear it for Matt.
All right, a proud and grateful Green Party leader. Let's go over because there's movement in Ford Nation. And as we await the next Premier of Ontario, we have learned that Bonnie Crombie has lost her seat. Well, she hasn't had a seat, but she's lost it, not getting a seat tonight. Let's listen to Doug Ford.
Ontario who've given you a third mandate, sir.
Well, I'm very blessed. I want to thank them. I'm very, very grateful. And I'll work my back off every day. Every morning I wake up, I'll work hard.
Live on CP24 and CTV News. How are you feeling right now in watching those results? Third consecutive majority. It doesn't happen very often in this province, sir.
Well, every election I'm always nervous, so we'll see what happens. Again, I'm very grateful to the people of Ontario, and we're going to make sure we protect the people of Ontario and protect their families and their jobs and businesses. And I'll fight tooth and nail against Donald Trump. I promise you that.
Is this the majority, the mandate that you were hoping for, or are you hoping for more seats?
No, I'm just fortunate. It's quite a feat to win 3 majorities in a row, but I'm very humbled over it, so thank you.
Thank you, sir. Congratulations. So Michelle and I were watching live as Premier Doug Ford now getting into the vehicle here with his family members, his wife Carla by his side. 3 of his 4 daughters here as well, watching the results roll in this evening here at a hotel near the Congress Center. Now the family on their way to celebrate this 3rd consecutive majority over at the Toronto Congress Center, where I'm sure there are dozens and dozens, if not hundreds of people. I haven't been there in a couple of hours, but I'm sure it's packed waiting to receive now Doug Ford, Premier for a 3rd time here in this province. You heard him say he plans to work his back off, feeling very grateful after receiving another majority mandate tonight. Back to you guys.
Thank you, Beatrice. Premier Doug Ford on his way to the Congress Center now, where he will celebrate with hundreds of supporters tonight. Let's take you there. CTV's Siobhan Morris is standing by with the latest. Siobhan.
I gotta say, Beatrice, there is still some room on the floor for her if she wants to come. There's lots of space still. The party's not really kicked into high gear just yet. I'm sure that'll change when Doug Ford arrives. Scott Reed, though, you wanted to talk about the NDP. What are you noticing?
Well, we've already talked about how efficient their vote has been, how that's yielded so many seats. You hear the cheers. It just looks, it's been announced that Bonnie Crombie has in fact been defeated in the Mississauga riding. That's going to create complications for the Liberals, obviously. But going back to the NDP, I think what's so interesting is that this is very vindicating for Marit Stiles, who wasn't thought to be able to have this much to celebrate this evening. There's a lot of knives are being sharpened within the NDP, within her own party, and I think she's going to be able to hold all of that back now.
So no risk of her leadership being questioned, you think, given this result tonight?
I don't think so at all. And they've really overperformed. They've outperformed expectations. She holds on to official opposition, dropped only a few seats, relatively speaking, and those within her party that were maybe starting to agitate for change, that was coming from the hard left. And I don't think that they're going to be able to look at these results and find a lot of an argument to say, well, obviously Mart has taken us into a tragic and terrible place. It's just not in the numbers. I think her position's very secure.
What kind of outreach do you think, if any, the Premier has to do now, knowing that he does have a third majority? It is not bigger at this point, it looks like, than it was last time. And we know that the voter turnout is really low. Does he have to do anything to close that gap in people's minds?
I'm going to bet 1,000% no. And I say that because, like, honestly, it's still a large majority government. There are a couple ridings to come. We'll see. They are a little bit below expectations. I think a lot of that is a consequence of a low voter turnout. It makes a bunch of close ridings a little harder to predict. But I think for Ford, he's going to do what has brought him here. He's going to stick to brand. He's going to be the guy who, as we just heard, I get up every morning, I work hard, I'm there for you, the little guy, the working man, and you know what, by golly, we're going to build, build, build. I think he's going to stick to those things. I don't think you're going to see much difference in terms of his conduct among his, within the legislature with his opposition. I don't think you're going to see him apologizing for the voter turnout or suggesting that this mandate isn't as bulletproof as he believes it.
So we are waiting for the man of the hour to arrive at his party. Everybody's waiting for him, so stick around. We will check in with him again when he arrives.
Thank you both. And as we await, let's swing over to our panel, because I think the big story this hour, Liberal leader Bonnie Crombie, she wanted to be the next premier. She has now failed to even win a seat. What does this mean?
Yeah, a fascinating turn of events when you compound that with the fact that the Liberals were actually able to be so far ahead of the NDP in the popular vote, Michelle and Lena, but as Nick Nanos was pointing out and Nick Dixon, unable to convert that into a seat count that would even preserve Bonnie Crombie's seat herself. John Moore, I'll start with you. What's your read on that?
It's not unprecedented that the party leader doesn't win, but because John Tory did that, actually. But at least his party was elected with the second largest caucus at Queen's Park. So it was something where he could go and run in another riding and then take his seat in the House. For Bonnie Crombie, it's perhaps humiliating is too harsh a word, but this is not the outcome she was looking for. And people, of course, tomorrow, all of her proxies will go out and say, but look at the vote, look at the popular vote, look what she did to the vote. But it's another 4 years of being a rump caucus.
I got to quickly say, I just got into my inbox a statement from Prime Minister Justin Trudeau on the outcome of this election, congratulating Doug Ford on his re-election. At this crucial time, he says, we must work together to defend Canadian interests, protect workers and businesses, and grow our economy. This includes making progress on the top-of-mind priorities of Ontarians and all Canadians, creating good-paying jobs, building more homes, and investing in health care and affordable child care. Together, the Prime Minister writes, we can build stronger communities and a stronger, fairer province and country for everyone. Kind of an interesting alliance that developed between those two individuals, Bill, over the years. As far as Doug Ford goes, we are standing by. We expect him to speak pretty soon. We just saw him talk to us right here. What was your take on his mood?
Well, it was actually kind of surprisingly low-key, but listen, he's been seeing his inside party polling. He knew what we all knew, that he was going to win this election, and he was probably going to get a majority. And I think he's probably sincere that he may be a little disappointed he didn't get a few more seats. The night's still not over, but I think he'll be very happy with that. And, you know, you look at the NDP, they're trying to put on a brave face today, but the reality is they haven't had a chance at the official opposition position for so long now, and they haven't made a real dent in him. Despite, as we talked earlier, it's not like there haven't been scandals on the green space and all of that. There have been opportunities, and they haven't been able to dent them. So, and if you're the Liberal Party, you have to look at that as well and say, if we can't bring this premier down even a little, then maybe we need to rethink our strategies.
We're looking right now at some of the really close races, Sabrina. What do you have your eye on as the night continues?
Yeah, I'm just looking at Eglinton Lawrence, where there wasn't an NDP candidate there, and Vince Caspero was facing, the Liberal Vince Caspero was facing off with Michelle Cooper from the PCs, and we had the NDPer drop out of that race for strategic voting reasons. The margin right now is about 152 votes away. I mean, I wonder if that's actually going to go to a recount. It could make a little bit of a difference. Maybe Doug Ford would be happier, obviously, if he gets a couple more seats. He did seem pretty somber there. But yeah, it just seems like the makeup of Queen's Park is already laid out now.
Speaking of somber, we're looking at Bonnie Crombie now entering headquarters, greeting some supporters. But Lena and Michelle, certainly a disappointing night, at least as far as her own electoral outcome is concerned.
Absolutely. And Bonnie Crombie is, as you mentioned, Vash, she's just arriving at party headquarters. She's got to do this, right? Put on a brave face for the cameras, hug the supporters, thank the voters, her team. But this is a devastating night for the leader of the Ontario Party. John, you talked about, the fact that this is humiliating might be too harsh a word. What do you think is next for the Ontario Liberals? Like, how do they bounce back from this, or do you expect that they'll try to reframe this tomorrow?
Oh, they'll try to reframe it, but they've got to figure out what the way forward is going to be for them. And I was thinking about this as like a sports
Bonnie Crombie
team.
Getting ready to speak.
Yeah.
Let's listen in live.
And thank you for being here. I want to thank each and every one of you for everything you have done in the last 28 days. Oh my gosh, those snowbanks, the salt, how many pairs of shoes have you ruined? You've really stepped up. And many of you put your name on the ballot that are in the room here tonight. So, listen, running for office is no small thing. So no matter who you ran for, or our province and our democracy are better because of the hard work, right? Yeah. So thank you. I know tonight isn't exactly the result we were looking for, but you should be very, very proud of what we did tonight. People counted us out. They said the Ontario Liberal Party was dead. Tonight, you prove them wrong. The Ontario Liberal Party is back to official party status, and that's a big milestone. But it gets better. We increased our share of the vote substantially to 30%. Double digits over the NDP, right? So this is a building block for us. It is a momentum that we can continue to push forward and to grow, right? So tonight, let's celebrate all our new MPPs that we're going to bring back, and let's celebrate coming back to party status. So that tomorrow we can get back to work making sure those other guys do their jobs. Yeah. Look, voters have given Doug Ford another mandate tonight. Smaller, but nonetheless. But many, many of you are asking for a strong voice to hold him accountable as Premier. And you can count on me, okay? So I'll say this tonight, Doug, we'll be watching. Yep. We know Ontario can do so much better, right? And you know I'm not going to slow down, not for 1 second when it comes up to standing up for the people in this province, right? I'm going to continue to fight for our public health care system every single day, right? Doug, you promised a lot of things during this campaign, and one of them was to get people more family doctors. And I'm going to hold you to it. The Ontario Liberal Party is going to hold you to it, right? Because the people of Ontario deserve more than they've gotten from you over the last 7 years. You promised to protect Ontario, but you neglected Ontario. And we're going to make sure that you go back to protecting us. We'll make sure that you protect our public health care system and our Greenbelt and everyone trying to get ahead in this province who doesn't have a direct line to your office. Ontario, I'm here. I am with you. And I commit to you today that I will stay on as I'll tell you again. Okay. I commit to you that I'll stay on as Ontario Liberal leader so that I can keep fighting for you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Let's enjoy the night.
You're watching a passionate Bonnie Crombie revealing a question we've been asking tonight. She will stay on as Liberal leader. She only took on that job in 2023, choosing in her speech to focus on the positives, the fact that the party has gained official party status and some seats. Let's go to Nathan Downer, who is in that room. Nathan.
Yeah, I think the room is a little bit mixed. A positive note, though, Bonnie Crombie making the big announcement. She's not going to step down. She will stay with the party. And they did make some gains. They have official party status. So to recap, she says it wasn't the result that they were looking for. They were hoping to do better, and they were thinking big. They were hoping to be the official opposition. They were also hoping Bonnie Crombie to win the riding that she ran in, Mississauga East Cooksville. That didn't happen. So, yeah, a little bit of disappointment, but I think the big takeaway, of course, is the fact that Bonnie Crombie is going to stay on for 4 years. And I was, asking one of her strategists before this speech, what's Bonnie Crombie's plan? And she said with confidence, they did consider this scenario, gaining more seats, getting official party status, but not winning in the riding that she ran in. And they had decided that she would continue on anyway. So the fight's not over. It was a snap election. They're looking at the positives. They did get 30% of the popular vote. So again, that's another gain. And they're going to use that as momentum to move forward. So I think for the first time since I've been here, things have kind of picked up. There's a bit more of a buzz, a bit more of a positive feeling. And that's because of what their leader, Bonnie Crombie, just had to say.
All right, Nathan Downer live in Mississauga. Thanks for this, Nathan. We're going to take you to Ford Nation now. That's where we find CTV's Siobhan Morris, and we understand the Premier is about to address that crowd. Siobhan, what are you hearing?
Any minute now, we are expecting that to happen. You saw him with Beatrice speaking, leaving a hotel where he was watching the results come in. Scott Reid, what do you think that Doug Ford needs to do in this speech, re-elected Premier for a third time?
I think first and foremost, he's going to claim the mandate that he said he was looking for. So I expect him to say, I went out, I called this election, I asked people to vote for me, they have, and that means I have a mandate to take on Trump, to put in place the protections for our jobs, for our industry, for our workers. I think that's what you're going to hear from him. There's going to be a lot of thanks, there's going to be a lot of applause, there's going to be a lot of dunking on the 10-foot rim, and he's going to be very happy. But I think most of all, he's going to say this is a mandate, and I intend to embrace it fully.
What kind of things do you think he's going to dunk on?
You don't underestimate this guy. He's got 3 majorities in a row. I think he can probably dunk, at least on an 8-foot rim. Look, I also think you're going to hear him, not tonight, but now the question is, well, what will he do with that mandate? And we know that there are going to be tariffs imposed next week. Will we see him, starting to hear the crowd start to rev up, he's coming soon, but will we see him start to talk with the federal government about packages, about spending, about rescue expenditures to try to help maintain jobs in industry here? For example, to keep industries from relocating on the other side of the tariff wall in the United States. So I think you're going to actually get a pretty full dose of policy, not tonight, but very soon, given what Donald Trump is about to do next week.
How quickly would you then expect him to call the House back? It's not expected to reconvene for a couple of weeks at this point, but what do you expect?
Their habit politically has been to let the House not return all that often, but I think there's an argument to be made since he asked for this mandate to deal with this crisis, and if that crisis is going to intensify next week, that he may want to move it back a little bit quicker. So we'll wait and see, but I would not be surprised to see if he tries to reconvene it end of March, April, certainly by May. I don't think we're going through to the fall without the legislature being in session in order to address some of these issues and the spending that will be required.
We talked about this international component of this campaign, although, again, I think Doug Ford might be very, very close now. This international component to a provincial campaign, how important was Doug Ford's role leading the premiers in this year, the head of the Council of the Federation?
I think it played an important role because it allowed him to consistently position himself, not just as a Premier of Ontario, but a leader on the national stage and in the international context. It built out his brand. It allowed him to build upon his classic brand as somebody who fights for jobs, fight for industry, fight for a stronger economy, but to do so in the context of challenge, as I say again, like in an international context. I think it really helped him. And look, throughout the campaign, he called a campaign hoping that he would be able to keep the focus on tariffs and Trump. And almost every darn day of this campaign, Trump was right in the news cycle, stuffing the conversation about tariffs right down our throats.
I got to ask today, maybe you have a better answer to this than the one that I gave, was people wondered what is it about Doug Ford that allows him, after all the scandals he's been through, to be in this position, returning his party to a third majority consecutively. How is that possible?
He's very comfortable in his skin. As a political player, as a political character, he knows exactly who he is. He communicates it, he reinforces it day by day. His campaign and his government builds and fortifies it constantly. Just think about this. No government in the history of Ontario has spent as much money advertising, reinforcing these economic themes, hammering away time and again. And the same thing on the party operation. They're raising money and they're spending money doing partisan advertising in support of Doug Ford, his brand. And I think you're seeing the effect of that with these three majority governments. People know who Doug Ford is, and I think Doug Ford can make the case that he knows who he is as Premier and as a politician.
You talked about those political ads. What do you think has worked so well with those ads? The ones that are not, the ones putting Doug Ford front and center, the party front and center. Why have those government ads worked so well to the party's advantage?
Well, shout out to my buddy Dennis Matthews from Creative Currency, who is behind so many of those ads, who's here tonight. I see him walking around. I think what has happened is you got to look at it in the context. I don't want to go all nerd on you, but from a political perspective, the importance of earned media, the ability to use earned media to reach, to connect, and to influence the thinking of the average voter, it's really diminished over time. We've seen media diminish in terms of its reach. And as a consequence, paid media, having an ad on while people are watching Jeopardy at night, having an ad on during a hockey match, that matters a lot. That gets seen, that gets heard, and the osmotic effect of that, month after month, year after year, Doug Ford jobs, Doug Ford industry, Doug Ford economic opportunity, he just marginalizes and sets his opponents off to the edges, fighting for the scraps of what's left of the public debate.
This is a very different Doug Ford that ran for office in 2018, right? And even the guy who was leading the province through that first very unruly summer, I would say.
I just saw the Ford family walk by us here, so, and it makes you think. At the beginning of his campaign, or at the beginning, I should say, of his political career, when he was at City Hall, he was seen as, the unpredictable brother. He was seen as the bully. He was seen as the muscle of the Rob and Doug Ford duo. Obviously, Rob Ford's no longer with us, but it's almost like he borrowed his brother's popular and populist appeal and has channeled it throughout his time as Premier. There's not a hint of bully in his general disposition these days. It's all about building. It's all about popular. It's all about being the guy that you want to have a barbecue with over the backyard fence. That's what he wants. That's what he projects. And tonight, the results are visible.
We are waiting to hear Doug Ford's message to Ontarians, re-elected now to a third majority government. We are waiting here at PC headquarters. I'll send it back to you.
Thank you to both of you. Yes, it could be any moment now. We see someone walking to the podium as we await the newly re-elected Premier of Ontario. We can turn it over to the panel.
Okay, let's send things over to our political panel now. Vashi Capello's leading that discussion. Vashi, there was a moment on the campaign trail that I want to talk to you about. When Doug Ford put on this hat that said, Canada is not for sale, and that got him a lot of attention. Is it moments like that that make him so popular?
I think it's a large part of it. Yeah, I think Scott really encapsulated in some of his comments what Doug Ford's appeal is, but so did that hat, right? He met the political moment, and he did so in a way that was politically authentic to himself. And I think that wasn't just a moment that was noticed in Ontario. That was a moment noticed across the country at a time of really an absence of that kind of leadership or those moments at the federal level. I don't know, Sabrina, if you felt the same way, but if you, I bet you in a year when we look back retrospectively, that moment that Lena just picked out is like the definitive moment when he probably clinched things.
Yeah, and we saw, you know, Liberal leader Bonnie Crombie kind of try to make a play on that with her hat of her own, calling out health care. Obviously, it didn't, you know, play the same way for her, but as Bill and John were saying earlier, you know, this is just Doug Ford's shtick and something he's very good at doing. I mean, like, you know, he makes mistakes and then walks them back, and people seem to forgive him for that. He's like been Teflon premier, and I think it also speaks to the campaign too, right? Like, they really ran a tight ship. They didn't allow him to really speak to media one-on-one unless you were a reporter in the States, right? So they didn't let their candidates speak. I mean, that is something that a frontrunner does. I mean, obviously us journalists, and it's a disservice to the public, but it worked for them. They stayed on message, and so yeah, I really think that there is something to Doug Ford where it seems like he's got this Midas touch, and it's really hard for his rivals to take him down a peg.
Before Ford speaks, can we talk about Bonnie Crombie's
I was just going to say, no love lost there.
She did not walk the Stations of the Cross. She did not concede.
Yeah.
She did not congratulate the Premier. And she behaved as if he's some sort of a pretender, that this was an illegitimate victory and I'm going to be watching you. And that, for me, displays this notion I often talk about, which is never presume that the things you don't like in a rival political figure, that all that stuff is shared by everybody else.
Yeah, she showed me she still doesn't get it. It's like the Democrats in the U.S. They can't beat Trump because they don't understand why people like him. I don't like him, but I understand him. When she tries to portray the Premier as she did there with, you know, his phone is open to his big cronies, his wealthy friends, his developer. When you talk about that, people don't buy it anymore. The Ford family brand has been so strong for so long. They're still the family that gets a call from somebody across town, and they show up with a truck with asphalt, and they put it in the woman's driveway to fill the hole. That's who he is. Whether you like it or not, whether you believe it or not, that is hardened in like concrete, and they keep trying to chip away at it. It's not the way to do it.
Well, even if you do have criticisms, John, like there are many Ontarians who do, it felt like the timing was just like that felt like a speech you would have given 2 days ago at the end of the campaign, not once the verdict had been rendered.
But even before we got the verdict, I mean, we've been on the air for about 3 hours, 3.5 hours, and I found NDP spokespeople and candidates and Liberals were relitigating the election. And you lost. You know, people didn't take that message during the campaign. They're not going to want to listen to it now.
Can I say one more thing
Very
before
quickly,
the
because I got
Premier
to send it back
speaks?
to the floor, yeah.
You know, we said he looked a little somber. It's one thing to say you're Captain Canada and you're going to fight these tariffs. It's not going to be an easy thing to do. This province could be in serious trouble. Is that a job you'd really want right now? Some of the Bonnie Crombie and others may have dodged a bullet here. This is going to be a tough time to be
in
Premier
a number of
Ontario.
days, right? We're looking at that first deadline of March the 4th, Lena and Michelle.
We're watching live images at the Toronto Congress Centre in Etobicoke, and you can see as this package is playing that the next Premier of Ontario, the 26th Premier, newly re-elected, is about to take the stage and address the crowd.
Yeah, and you can just see from some of the messaging we're seeing on that screen, he is focused on these tariffs. He's focused on taking on Donald Trump. Let's go live to Beatrice Faisman, who's on the floor in that crowd tonight. Beatrice.
Well, you can see the supporters here watching the screens, Michelle and Lena. They are getting ready to welcome Premier Doug Ford into the room. This is essentially the campaign song that we've heard playing over the advertisements over the course of the last 28 days, gearing up to today. The words, who's going to fight for you, and all the people around me are yelling those exact words right now. We've got a 2-minute warning that Premier Doug Ford Ford would be coming out 2 minutes ago. And so I imagine as soon as this video is done playing here, we'll start to see him. But I mean, if you look around the room, and of course we're showing you the backs of people's heads as we're looking up at the stage, people here excited. They are anticipating what Doug Ford is going to say as he gets this third majority mandate from the voters of this province, something that is rare, not only here in the province of Ontario, but rare across the country. Let me see if I can bring in the president of the Ontario PC party here, Michael Diamond. Congratulations on another big win. How are you feeling?
Oh, wonderful. Look, it's been an awful long time. It's not common to get 3 consecutive majorities, so we're just really proud of the whole team, Premier Ford's performance. Great historic night.
I know you were with Doug Ford crisscrossing this province. What did you hear from the voters from Ontario?
Look, there was certainly a lot of concern about who would, as the song playing behind us sang, fight for the people, for their interests, and Doug Ford was clearly the answer to that question. So we're really gratified by the mandate from the people of Ontario.
How rare is it, Michael, to have these federal topics make it to the way to the forefront of an Ontario provincial election?
Well, look, we're living in unprecedented times. You know, we see instability south of the border, and that's causing concern in Ontario. So this was the top-of-mind issue. Who's going to protect the economy of Ontario? And again, Doug Ford was obviously the answer to that.
And as we get ready to hear the welcome here, thank you for your time, Michael. The Premier of Ontario being introduced on stage right now. So we'll pause here as we take in this moment of him coming on stage to a room full of people who support Doug Ford and the message, Protect Ontario, being projected on the screen behind him. Let's listen in.
Wow. Thank you. Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. Boy, what a crowd. Thank you so much, and what a night. And what a result. Thank you so much. Together we have made history. Together we have secured a strong, historic third majority mandate. A mandate to protect Ontario from the bottom of my heart. I thank you for being here, for sharing this incredible moment with me. To the thousands of volunteers right across this province who braved the cold, who knocked on over 2 million doors, tonight belongs to you. Thank you. I want to begin by thanking Carla and my daughters for your endless support. I couldn't do this without you. I also want to thank Marit Stiles, Bonnie Crombie, Mike Schreiner, and every single person who put their name on a ballot. We can disagree on policy, but there's no question at all. Each one of them loves our province, and each one of them loves Canada, the greatest country on earth. Democracy only works if people are willing to step up and step forward. Our province is stronger because of your decision to do so, so I want to thank all the candidates. During my time in office, I hope I've proven I will work with anyone, I will work with everyone to get things done. Now, as we stare down the threat of Donald Trump's tariffs, I will continue to do just that. I will work with every level of government and every political stripe, because fighting back against Donald Trump, standing up for Canada, it will take a full Team Ontario effort. It will take a full Team Canada effort. Friends, over the last 7 years, we've made so much progress together. Over 1 million more people are working today than when we were elected in 2018. We've attracted over $70 billion in new investments into our economy, in new auto and battery plants, in our manufacturing sector, in new life science facilities, in Ontario's growing tech sector. Now together, we have to fight hard to protect our progress This election, we ask the people for a mandate, a strong mandate that outlives and outlasts the Trump administration. A mandate to do whatever it takes to protect Ontario. Well, friends, the people have spoken. They're ready to stand up for Canada. This election, we ask the people for a mandate to make Ontario the most competitive place in the G7 to invest, create jobs, and do business. The people said yes. We asked the people for a mandate to unleash the awesome economic potential of the Ring of Fire. The people said yes. We asked the people for a mandate to build up our economy by tearing down internal trade barriers, and the people said yes. We asked the people for a mandate to cut red tape and the excuses, streamline approvals, and build things faster. The people said yes. We asked the people for a mandate to get the federal government out of our way so we can get shovels in the ground on the projects that will build the true North Strong and Free. The people said yes. We asked the people for a mandate to build pipelines, to build rail lines and transmission lines, to diversify our trade, find new markets, new customers, and rely less on the old ones. The people said yes. We asked the people for a mandate to clean up our streets, crack down on crime, end encampments, and protect schools and daycares from drug injection sites. The people said yes. And we asked the people for a mandate to build Highway 413, the Bradford Bypass, Highway 3, Highway 7, Highway 11, Highway 69, to bring sanity back. Offers big and bold ideas. It's a vision for the future of our great province and a vision for the future of our economy. Ontario is blessed with everything we need to succeed, the best and most skilled workers anywhere in the world. A pipeline of world-class talent with 70,000 STEM graduates each and every single year. Northern Ontario's enormous God-given potential, offering every critical mineral the world wants, every critical mineral the world needs, and one of the cleanest, greenest grids in the world, with the first small modular nuclear reactors in the G7. You know, folks, it's no wonder the world has their eyes on us. They're looking at Ontario with envy. Now, it's up to us to unlock our potential, roll up our sleeves to get to work. We'll retrain workers for better jobs and bigger paychecks. We'll retool companies for new customers and new markets. We'll reshore supply chains to bring good jobs back home. We'll rebuild roads and highways to keep people working and keep our economy competitive. Friends, this election, we promise to do whatever it takes to protect Ontario. And I'm so proud of the support we received. Together, we made more inroads into new communities, with more people seeing themselves reflected in our party, in our priorities. A record number of unions, including first-time supporters like our great firefighters, our great police, uniform locals, hospitality workers, and more trade unions, mayors from every region of Ontario, and everyday hardworking people in Thunder Bay, Timmins, and Sault Ste. Marie, in Eastern Ontario, Hamilton and Windsor, in Brampton and Mississauga. Your support is truly humbling. I will never, ever take it for granted. I will never stop working for you, because we're in a battle for the future of our province, for the future of our country. I promise you this, I will wake up every day and I will fight like I've never fought before. I will fight for every auto worker in Windsor, Woodstock, St. Thomas, and Oakville, in Brampton, Ingersoll, Oshawa, Alliston, and Cambridge. I will fight for every miner in Timmins, Thunder Bay, and Sudbury. I will fight for every steelmaker in Sault Ste. Marie, Nanticoke, and Hamilton. I will fight for every worker on the factory floor, every student starting their career, and every senior starting their retirement. I will fight for First Nations communities, for newcomers, for everyone in Ontario looking to get ahead. I will fight for you. This election was about who we are, about the future we choose for ourselves. Donald Trump thinks he can break us. He thinks he can divide and conquer, pit region against region. Donald Trump doesn't know what we know. He is underestimating us. He is underestimating the resilience of the Canadian people, the Canadian spirit. Make no mistake, Canada won't start a fight with the U.S., but you better believe we're ready to win one. So thank you. Thank you, everyone. So, folks, let me be clear. Canada will never, ever be the 51st state. And Canada is not for sale. Over the last weeks and months, I've seen the best of our province, the best of our country. Hardworking people standing up for what's decent, for what's right. It's you, the people, who will get us through this, who will fight for our future. Together, we're going to emerge from this stronger and more united than ever before. From coast to coast to coast, we're going to stand together. We're going to fight. We're going to fight for our province. We're going to fight for our country. Together, we're going to protect Ontario. I want to thank you, and may God bless the people of Canada. May God bless the people of Ontario. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
The 26th Premier of Ontario, newly re-elected, addressing supporters in Etobicoke and the people of this province. Let's go to CTV's Queen's Park Bureau Chief Siobhan Morris as the balloons are falling. A celebration underway tonight, and definitely a familiar mantra. He is vowing to protect Ontario. Siobhan, that message resonating with voters.
Minister rather than Premier.
I had the very same thought as the flag was waving behind him. He was talking about the fighting Canadian spirit. Said he was going to dunk the ball, and he dunked it with both hands, and it was all fighting words. The thing that jumped out to me, he said, we are in a battle for the future of our country, a battle for the future of our province, and he made the mandate full tonight by saying he's going to take the fight to Donald Trump. It's what the crowd wanted to hear, and it's the mandate that he wanted.
Any other big standout moments for you? He did talk about the union support that's been so critical to the PC party's success the last few campaigns.
The wind-up at the end, where he invoked Trump and said that he doesn't understand our fighting spirit, where he pledged that he would lead that battle, again, as you say, not just a leader of the province, but positioning himself as a leader for the country. And interestingly, for a room full of conservatives, he positioned himself as the remedy, as the antidote, as the opponent to conservative Donald Trump, Republican Donald Trump. I thought that was interesting, and these guys lapped it up like honey.
What do you think happens when on the federal scene where we're about to see a new prime minister chosen, potentially a new election there? How does Doug Ford fit into that?
You're going to see a battle between all of the politicians on the federal stage to ape what Doug Ford just did tonight. put themselves in the position of the battler, willing to go to battle with Donald Trump. It's going to start next week when these tariffs are imposed. You're going to hear from Mark Carney. You're going to hear from the incumbent Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. You're going to hear from Pierre Poilievre. He just gave the speech that Pierre Poilievre would love to give every day.
Siobhan Morris, speaking to Scott Reed at PC Party headquarters, there's Doug Ford meeting with supporters tonight. He is surrounded by them, taking selfies. That's what tonight is about, thanking the voters, thanking the supporters. All smiles there. Doug Ford asked for a fresh mandate to take on Donald Trump and the threat of U.S. tariffs, and that is exactly what he gets tonight. We're looking at live images again of the Congress Center. I'm going to swing over to our panel here. Vashi, there's something I've been thinking about. The federal conservatives, they're really looking at this. If you're Pierre Poilievre and you're watching tonight, what are you taking from this situation and this storyline?
Well, the trajectory for the provincial conservatives here in Ontario and the federal conservatives could not be more different at this point in time. Where Trump has helped incumbents like Doug Ford, it has done the opposite for people pushing from opposition, in the case of Pierre Poilievre and in other instances, but primarily and most pronounced with Pierre Poilievre. So I think you're looking at the map and thinking, okay, look, the GTA doesn't look so bad. Perhaps, as Nick Nanos has said, that's still a ripe area potentially for federal conservatives, but you've got to acknowledge the degree to which Doug Ford met the moment where Trump was concerned and the degree to which it does not appear the federal conservatives did the same.
John, you're shaking your head. You're
no,
nodding.
I'm nodding.
You're
Along.
nodding, I should say.
And, you know,
what's running through your mind?
I thought that was a very solid speech. And one of the things that Doug Ford has that Pierre Poilievre hasn't until quite recently is positivity and a vision of a bright future rather than this sort of hellscape of the present that we're living in. And you would have noticed two phrases he kept coming back to, which was very good speech construction. And that was, the people said yes. So he mapped out all the mandates that he had asked for and said the people said yes. And then the whole fighting metaphor is excellent. I mean, that becomes the core of the speech.
This snap election, it was a gamble. Clearly, it's paid off. But as we look at the results continuing to come in right now, they've definitely gotten more seats. Okay, we are going to go to, you know what we haven't heard from? Marit Stiles. So we're going to go to NDP party headquarters as Marit Stiles greets supporters tonight. Certainly she got her seat, and she definitely is of the official opposition, which is a good thing. But if you look at the seat count as the results roll in tonight, they're not where they were at dissolution.
Yeah, there's Marit Stiles again, meeting with supporters in Davenport tonight. That's another really interesting storyline. A lot of people thought Bonnie Crombie and the Liberals would finish in second place tonight. And you just see a very different story unfolding. The NDP able to keep their official opposition party status. Marit Stiles, this was her first election as leader of the party on the campaign trail. She really talked about health care. She talked about the affordability crisis, the homelessness crisis. And she really tried to take jabs at Doug Ford and take him on. And there she is, Marit Stiles, on the stage now in Davenport at her party headquarters as she gets ready to give her speech. All smiles tonight. Let's listen in.
Thank you so much. Oh, wow. Hello, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. My name is Marit Stiles. Look, we set out in this election to form a government on your side. Now, the results aren't everything that we hoped for, but the people of Ontario made their choice. They've re-elected the government, hoping it will help protect them from Donald Trump and his tariffs. And they've entrusted me and my team to do a different, but also very important job. Folks, we've been tasked again to serve the people of Ontario as their official opposition. And our job will be to hold this government to account. And that is the job that we are going to do with our usual fight and our determination, but also with love and hope and optimism. And you know what? In another few years, we are gonna face a rematch. And I'm there for it, my friends. Now, listen, I want you to know that I'm congratulating tonight Premier Ford on his victory. And I really do want to offer him any possible help that we can provide in the face of the threat of Donald Trump. The threat is real. And I deeply believe that we can overcome it with a strong Team Ontario and a strong Team Canada approach. So, you know, my message to the people of Ontario is, in the face of Trump, we will stand together, and we, the Ontario NDP, will stand up for the people.
NDP leader Marit Stiles vows to continue the fight and work with newly re-elected Doug Ford. This is CTV Ontario Election 2025. Thank you for joining us. Doug Ford winning a decisive majority.
And depending on how you're watching us tonight, our coverage continues in a moment on CTV National News or on your local late newscast. For those joining us on CP24, we'll see you right after the break with more. We'll leave you with this live shot from Ford Nation tonight. Stay with us as our extensive coverage continues tonight.
Introducing Rogers Xfinity with internet that handles it all.
Awesome. I'll be right back.
Built for more devices.
Okay.
Doug Ford, how he beat his rivals, and who will form the opposition. A last-minute Canadian pitch in Washington before tariffs are set to kick in, and what led to this moment in the U.S. Capitol.
We're the closest of nations, and we had very good discussions today, but we didn't discuss Canada.
Thank you. Grieving relatives react to the possible discovery of human remains at a Manitoba landfill.
All I could think about was I want my mom.
What police are saying about the shocking death of screen icon Gene Hackman, his wife, and their dog, and who found them dead.
Are they breathing?
As progressive conservatives have pulled off a rare political feat as we come on the air tonight. 3 back-to-back majorities. That's the first time that's happened in the province since 1959. Let's get to CTV's John Venevelli-Rao, who is standing by live at PC headquarters in Toronto. And John, the gamble of a snap election paying off for Doug Ford tonight. He pitched himself throughout this campaign as the man to take on Donald Trump and his tariffs, and he brought that up again, the U.S. president, in his victory speech tonight. What did he say?
Well, he said he can't pit us against each other as Canadians, that Canada will not be the 51st state, and that Canada is not for sale. Messages we've heard him say throughout this campaign. And boy, right after 9 o'clock when the polls closed here, it just took a couple of minutes before the announcement was made that the PCs would get a majority, a third straight majority here. There was a huge cheer here. And while it is a big win for Doug Ford, it is notable that his party hasn't exactly gained any seats in the legislature. And the composition of the legislature looks an awfully lot like it did heading into this campaign. So for critics who said that the snap election was unnecessary, a waste of taxpayers' money, they may be feeling slightly vindicated by these results tonight. But no question, a third straight majority win is a huge victory for the Progressive Conservatives. And Doug Ford, who said he wanted a strong mandate to take on Donald Trump and to spend big to counterattack tariff, the fallout from tariffs. Here's a little bit more of what Doug Ford had to say tonight.
What a night, and what a result. Thank you so much. Together we have made history. Together we have secured a strong, historic third majority mandate.
Now, the NDP, they hung on to their official opposition status. The Liberals in Ontario did make some gains in that they have enough seats now to regain official party status, something they haven't had in 7 years, though notably, Liberal Party leader Bonnie Crombie failed to win her seat tonight. Omar.
All right, John Venevelli-Rao at PC headquarters in Toronto tonight. John, thank you for this. Now, as we mentioned, Ontario's election campaign was dominated in large part by the threat of U.S. tariffs. Today, the U.S. president said those tariffs will take effect on Tuesday, as Canada again made a push in Washington, urging Trump not to follow through. CTV's Judy Trin explains.
A full court press from Canada's top officials responsible for border security and drug enforcement, armed with a message for the American border czar, Tom Homan, that Canada is stopping fentanyl from being smuggled into the U.S.
The evidence is irrefutable. The progress is being made. In my view, any test that was put on this country, on Canada, in terms of showing progress and meeting standards for the border, I believe those have been met.
In a span of 40 days, the RCMP went on a crackdown, making 524 arrests and seizures across Canada, including more than 46 kilograms of fentanyl and more than 15,700 pills.
Over 15,000 pills, not strictly fentanyl, but other pills as well. 122 firearms and multiple arrests, over 524 arrests. So that's a success.
American data shows that last year, 19.5 kilograms of fentanyl was seized at the border. That equals 0.2% of the total. But that's not good enough for the president.
The country should not be allowing those drugs to come into the United States of America, and we're not going to allow it to happen. So that goes on the 4th of March.
From Blackhawks to drug detection dogs, Canada is spending $1.3 billion to fight the problem of fentanyl and illegal migration. If Donald Trump is unconvinced by the evidence, the Prime Minister says Canada will hit back.
If on Tuesday there are unjustified tariffs brought in on Canada, we will have an immediate and extremely strong response, as Canadians expect.
The federal government has a plan to retaliate with tariffs on $155 billion worth of American goods. It's a move that polls show 70% of Canadians support. Omar.
All right, Judy Trin in Ottawa tonight. While hosting the British Prime Minister today, Trump was pressed about his past comments on a leader he will be meeting in Washington tomorrow.
Do you still think that Mr. Zelensky is a dictator?
Did I say that? I can't believe I said that. Next question.
The U.S. president seemed to deny calling Volodymyr Zelensky a dictator just days ago. And later, at that joint press conference with Keir Starmer, Trump shut down a question about his annexation threats against Canada.
We had very good discussions today, but we didn't discuss Canada.
Thank you.
And Wayne Gretzky's wife is speaking out about the backlash the hockey legend is facing from Canadians over his support of Trump. On Instagram today, Janet Gretzky posted that the mean comments have, quote, broken his heart. Last night, Donald Trump defended his friend, calling him the greatest Canadian, and that he doesn't want anyone in Canada to say anything bad about him. Gretzky, so far, has remained silent. There is shock and mystery tonight surrounding the death of Oscar-winning actor Gene Hackman and his wife Betsy Arakawa. The bodies of the couple, along with their dog, were found by a caretaker who frantically called 911.
Are they breathing?
I have no idea. I'm not inside the house. It's closed. It's locked. I can't go in. But I see them. She's laying down on a floor from the window.
Okay. Are they moving at all?
No, dude, they're not moving. Just send somebody up here really quick.
Hackman, who is 95 years old, and his 65-year-old wife, Betsy Arakawa, were found Wednesday inside their Santa Fe, New Mexico home. Police say they were likely dead for some time. A warrant reveals Arakawa's body was found in a bathroom near the front door, which was open. An orange bottle of prescription pills scattered on the countertop, and a space heater near her head, which detectives say could indicate she fell abruptly to the ground. Hackman was found in a mudroom near the kitchen, his cane next to him, according to the warrant, and signs he too may have fallen. Police say the deaths are suspicious, but they are ruling out a carbon monoxide leak or foul play.
There was no indication of a struggle. There was no indication of anything that was missing from the home or disturbed.
The sudden deaths leaving fans shaken, reflecting on the life and legacy of an entertainment legend. Here's CTV's Scott Lightfoot.
I expect and demand your very best.
For more than 5 decades, he was a star of the screen, but Gene Hackman started his life as a child of divorce who lied about his age